Imagine if I told you that you possess a superpower, one that could change the course of your life, enhance your relationships, and reshape the world around you. What if I said this power isn't something mythical, but something already within you, waiting to be discovered? It's not about flying or moving objects with your mind, but rather about harnessing the extraordinary potential inside you. What if you could unlock your true potential today? In the quiet moments before dawn, when the world sleeps and the mind begins to stir, there exists a profound opportunity, a chance to witness the most extraordinary superpower humanity possesses. It requires no cape, no radioactive spider bite, no alien technology. It asks only for courage, the courage to look inward and truly see yourself. Self-awareness is the cornerstone of human excellence, yet it remains the most underutilized power in our arsenal. We live in a world that constantly directs our attention outward, to social media feeds, to other people's achievements, to external validations and distractions. But the greatest discoveries, the most transformative moments, the most profound changes begin with a single revolutionary act: knowing yourself. What does it mean to possess the power of self-awareness? It means understanding your emotional landscape with the precision of a cartographer mapping uncharted territory. It means recognizing your patterns of thought, your triggers, your strengths, and yes, your limitations with unflinching honesty. It means becoming the observer of your own life, stepping back from the drama of daily existence to see the bigger picture of who you are and who you're becoming. Consider Sarah Chen, a brilliant software engineer who spent the first decade of her career wondering why she felt perpetually exhausted despite her professional success. She was technically proficient, well regarded by colleagues, and consistently promoted, yet something was missing. The breakthrough came not through external achievement, but through an internal reckoning. During a particularly stressful project deadline, Sarah found herself snapping at team members, feeling overwhelmed by responsibilities that should have been manageable. Instead of pushing through as she always had, she paused. She began to observe her patterns with the same analytical precision she applied to code. What she discovered changed everything. Sarah realized that her greatest strength, her meticulous attention to detail, had become her greatest weakness when taken to extremes. She was spending hours perfecting work that was already excellent, driven not by quality standards, but by a deep-seated fear of criticism that traced back to childhood experiences. Her self-awareness revealed that she wasn't just a perfectionist. She was someone using perfectionism as armor against vulnerability. This revelation didn't diminish her capabilities, it transformed them. By understanding her motivations, Sarah learned to channel her detail-oriented nature more strategically. She began delegating more effectively, setting boundaries around her work, and most importantly, she started taking calculated risks that led to breakthrough innovations in her field. Self-awareness hadn't changed who she was, it had unleashed who she could become. The power of self-awareness operates on multiple levels. At its most basic, it's emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize and name your feelings as they arise. But at its deepest level, it's something far more profound, the recognition that you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, and you are not your circumstances. You are the awareness that observes all of these things. This distinction is revolutionary. When you understand that you are the observer rather than the observed, you gain power over your responses to life's challenges. You realize that the story you tell yourself about who you are is just that, a story, and stories can be rewritten. Self-awareness reveals the hidden drivers of your behavior. It illuminates why you make certain choices, why specific situations trigger strong reactions, why you excel in some areas while struggling in others. This knowledge becomes your superpower because it allows you to work with your nature rather than against it. Think of self-awareness as your internal GPS system. Without it, you're driving through life blindfolded, making turns based on impulse, reaction, or what others tell you to do. With it, you can see the terrain clearly, understand your starting point, choose your destination deliberately, and navigate the journey with intention. The development of self-awareness requires practice, much like any superpower. It begins with small acts of observation. Notice your breathing when you're stressed. Pay attention to your posture when you're confident versus when you're uncertain. Observe your internal dialogue when you face challenges. These micro-observations accumulate into macro insights about your patterns and tendencies. Meditation, journaling, and regular self-reflection are training grounds for this power. But perhaps most importantly, self-awareness grows through feedback, both from trusted others and from honest self-assessment. It requires the humility to admit when you're wrong, the curiosity to explore why you think the way you think, and the courage to change when change is needed. The ripple effects of self-awareness extend far beyond personal development. When you truly know yourself, you make better decisions because those decisions align with your authentic values rather than external expectations. You build stronger relationships because you understand what you bring to them and what you need from them. You pursue goals that genuinely matter to you rather than goals that look impressive to others. Self-awareness is also the gateway to developing other superpowers. You cannot effectively use intuition if you don't know how your mind processes information. You cannot develop emotional intelligence without first understanding your own emotional patterns. You cannot lead others authentically until you understand your own leadership style and motivations. In a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable, self-awareness provides an anchor of stability. It allows you to remain centered, regardless of external circumstances, because your sense of self comes from within rather than from without. This internal stability becomes a source of strength, not just for you, but for everyone around you. The power of self-awareness transforms ordinary moments into opportunities for growth. It turns setbacks into lessons, conflicts into chances for deeper understanding, and successes into stepping stones toward greater achievements. When you possess this superpower, you become the author of your own life story, rather than merely a character reacting to events as they unfold. As we journey deeper into understanding human potential, remember that self-awareness is not a destination, but a continuous process of discovery. Each day offers new opportunities to know yourself more deeply, to understand your patterns more clearly, and to use that understanding to create positive change in your life and in the world around you. In the millisecond before a traffic accident, something inexplicable happens. Time seems to slow, and a driver swerves away from danger they couldn't have consciously seen coming. In a boardroom negotiation, an executive suddenly changes strategy based on a feeling they can't explain, leading to a breakthrough deal. A mother wakes up at exactly the moment her child, miles away at college, needs help. These aren't coincidences. They're manifestations of one of humanity's most mysterious and powerful abilities, intuition. This superpower operates beyond the realm of logical thinking, accessing information through channels that science is only beginning to understand. Yet for too many of us, this innate ability lies dormant, dismissed as unscientific or unreliable in our data-driven world. Intuition is not magic, though it may seem magical. It's not mysticism, though it connects us to something larger than our conscious minds. Instead, intuition is a sophisticated form of information processing that occurs below the threshold of conscious awareness. It's your brain's ability to synthesize vast amounts of data, sensory input, past experiences, pattern recognition, emotional intelligence, and deliver actionable insights in the form of sudden knowing, gut feelings, or instinctive understanding. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, an emergency room physician, discovered the power of his intuition during what seemed like a routine night shift. A middle-aged woman arrived with relatively mild symptoms, slight chest discomfort, no obvious distress, normal vital signs. By all standard protocols, she was low priority. But something felt wrong to Marcus. He couldn't articulate why, but every instinct screamed that this patient was in serious danger. Against the advice of residents who pointed to the woman's stable presentation, Marcus ordered an immediate EKG and blood work. The tests revealed what his intuition had somehow detected. The woman was having a massive heart attack. The subtle signs, a particular quality in her voice, an almost imperceptible change in her skin tone, a way she held her posture, had registered in Marcus's unconscious mind and been processed through years of experience to produce an urgent warning. His decision to trust that inner knowing saved the woman's life. More importantly, it taught Marcus to honor his intuition as a legitimate and powerful diagnostic tool alongside his medical training. The power of intuition emerges from the fact that our conscious minds can only process a tiny fraction of the information available to us at any given moment. While we're focused on what seems most obvious or important, our unconscious minds are constantly scanning the environment, noting subtle patterns, making connections, and detecting anomalies that might indicate opportunity or danger. This ability evolved as a survival mechanism. Our ancestors who could sense the presence of predators, read the intentions of strangers, or anticipate changes in weather had significant survival advantages. They didn't need to consciously analyze every environmental cue. Their intuitive systems processed these signals automatically and delivered quick judgments that could mean the difference between life and death. In our modern world, this same system operates continuously, though we often ignore its messages. Your intuition might manifest as a sudden reluctance to take a certain route home, later learning there was a serious accident on that road, an inexplicable attraction to a particular job posting, which becomes the opportunity that transforms your career, or an instant positive feeling about someone you've just met, who becomes a lifelong friend or partner. Developing your intuitive superpower requires learning to distinguish between true, intuitive insight and emotional reactivity, wishful thinking, or anxiety. Genuine intuition tends to arrive quietly, but with unmistakable clarity. It doesn't argue or justify itself. It simply presents information. It often comes with a sense of rightness that transcends logical explanation, and it typically points toward actions that serve your highest good, even when those actions might be challenging or uncomfortable. The cultivation of intuition begins with creating space for it to emerge. In our hyper-connected, constantly stimulated world, we've become addicted to noise, both external and internal. Intuitive insights arise from stillness, from moments when the analytical mind relaxes its grip and allows deeper wisdom to surface. Meditation is perhaps the most direct method for developing intuitive abilities. By practicing present moment awareness and learning to observe thoughts without immediately engaging with them, you create the mental space necessary for intuitive insights to emerge. Even 5 minutes of daily stillness can significantly enhance your ability to access this inner guidance system. Body awareness is another crucial element in developing intuition. Your body is constantly receiving and processing information from the environment, much of it below the threshold of conscious awareness. Learning to pay attention to physical sensations, the tightening in your chest when someone isn't being truthful, the lightness you feel when you're on the right path, the heaviness that accompanies poor decisions, helps you develop a more sophisticated relationship with your intuitive guidance. Nature plays a vital role in intuitive development. The natural world operates according to rhythms and patterns that resonate with our deepest biological programming. Time spent in natural settings, away from the artificial stimulation of technology, allows your intuitive faculties to recalibrate and strengthen. The practice of intuitive decision-making starts small. Before making minor choices, which route to take to work, what to order for lunch, which movie to watch, pause and notice what your body and emotions are telling you. Pay attention to first impressions and initial responses before your analytical mind begins its commentary. Keep track of these intuitive choices and their outcomes to build confidence in your inner guidance system. One of the most powerful aspects of intuitive development is learning to ask the right questions. Instead of demanding that your intuition solve complex problems instantly, learn to pose questions that allow for nuanced, helpful responses. Rather than asking, "Should I take this job?" you might ask, "What do I need to know about this opportunity?" Or, "How does this align with my deeper purpose?" Creative practices are excellent training grounds for intuition. Writing, painting, music, dance, and other creative expressions require you to access non-logical forms of knowing. They teach you to trust the creative process even when you can't see exactly where it's leading. This trust and comfort with uncertainty are essential elements of intuitive development. The integration of intuition with logical thinking creates a powerful combination. Rather than seeing these as opposing forces, mature intuitive development involves learning when to rely on analytical thinking and when to trust intuitive guidance. The most effective decision makers use both systems in complement, allowing logic to evaluate options that intuition has identified as worthy of consideration. As you develop your intuitive superpowers, you'll notice that life begins to flow more smoothly. You'll find yourself in the right place at the right time more frequently. Opportunities will appear with surprising regularity. Relationships will deepen as you become more attuned to the subtle dynamics of human interaction. Problems will be resolved more quickly as you learn to sense solutions before they become apparent to your logical mind. The power of intuition connects you to the web of information and energy that surrounds and includes all of us. It's your personal access point to a larger intelligence that transcends individual thinking. When you learn to trust and develop this superpower, you become a more effective participant in the grand orchestration of life itself. Reality is not what it appears to be. This simple statement, which sounds like the beginning of a philosophical discourse, is actually one of the most practical truths you can embrace. The world you experience through your senses represents only a tiny fraction of what's actually happening around you. The superpower of perception is the ability to see beyond these limitations, to notice what others miss, to recognize patterns that remain invisible to most, and to extract meaningful information from situations that appear ordinary on the surface. Consider the art appraiser who can spot a forgery with a single glance, not through extensive analysis, but through an intuitive recognition of subtle inconsistencies in brushwork. Think of the experienced teacher who identifies a student's learning difficulties long before formal assessments reveal them, or the entrepreneur who recognizes market opportunities that established companies somehow overlook. These individuals haven't developed supernatural abilities. They've cultivated the superpower of enhanced perception. The story of Detective Angela Martinez illustrates this power in action. For 15 years, Angela had worked homicide cases, developing what colleagues called an uncanny ability to solve seemingly impossible murders. She didn't rely primarily on forensic evidence or witness testimonies, though these were important. Instead, she had trained herself to perceive details that others overlooked and to recognize patterns that weren't immediately obvious. During one particularly challenging case, a businessman found dead in his locked office with no signs of forced entry. Other investigators focused on financial motives and obvious suspects, but Angela noticed something else entirely. The victim's coffee cup was positioned differently than it appeared in security footage from earlier that day. His desk chair was adjusted to a height that didn't match his typical setting. Most tellingly, there was a barely perceptible scuff mark on the window frame that suggested someone had exited that way, despite the office being on the third floor. While others saw an impossible locked room mystery, Angela perceived a carefully staged scene. Her enhanced perception led her to discover that the killer had indeed escaped through the window, using climbing equipment and extraordinary planning to create the illusion of an impossible crime. The case was solved not through high-tech forensics, but through the superpower of noticing what was there but not obvious. The power of perception operates on multiple levels. At its most basic, it involves training your senses to gather more information from your environment. But at its most sophisticated, it's about recognizing patterns, understanding context, and interpreting the subtle languages of human behavior, natural systems, and social dynamics. Enhanced perception begins with present moment awareness. Most people live their lives in a state of partial attention, their minds divided between past regrets, future worries, and immediate tasks. This scattered attention means they miss vast amounts of information available in each moment. The first step in developing perceptual superpowers is learning to be fully here, fully now, fully engaged with what's actually happening rather than what you think is happening. Visual perception can be dramatically enhanced through conscious practice. Start by spending time really looking at your environment. Notice colors, textures, shadows, movements that you typically ignore. Pay attention to how light changes throughout the day, how people's facial expressions shift in response to different emotions, how the energy of a room changes when different individuals enter or leave. But perception extends far beyond the visual realm. Auditory perception involves learning to distinguish between what people say and how they say it. The same words can carry entirely different meanings depending on tone, pace, emphasis, and timing. Developing your auditory perception means learning to hear the emotional subtext in conversations, the hesitation that suggests uncertainty, the enthusiasm that indicates genuine excitement. Emotional perception might be the most valuable perceptual skill in human interaction. This involves reading the subtle energetic signals that people constantly broadcast, the micro-expressions that reveal true feelings, the body language that contradicts spoken words, the changes in energy that indicate shifts in mood or intention. When you develop this ability, you become significantly more effective in all your relationships, both personal and professional. Environmental perception involves learning to read the subtle signs in your surroundings that provide information about safety, opportunity, and optimal timing. This might mean noticing changes in traffic patterns that suggest a better route, recognizing seasonal shifts that indicate perfect timing for certain activities, or sensing the energy of different locations to determine where you're most productive or creative. The cultivation of enhanced perception requires what psychologists call soft focus, a relaxed, open attention that takes in more information than targeted, focused attention. It's the difference between using a flashlight and sitting by a campfire. The flashlight illuminates specific details intensely but misses everything outside its beam. The campfire provides gentle illumination that reveals the broader landscape. One of the most powerful perceptual skills is pattern recognition. Humans are naturally pattern-seeking creatures, but most people only recognize the most obvious patterns. Developing the superpower means learning to see patterns across different domains, how market trends mirror natural cycles, how personal relationships follow predictable stages, how individual behaviors cluster into identifiable types. The master chef who can taste a complex dish and immediately identify all its ingredients demonstrates advanced gustatory perception. The experienced gardener who can assess plant health at a glance shows botanical perception. The skilled negotiator who recognizes the exact moment when the other party is ready to make a deal exhibits social perception. These abilities seem mysterious to outsiders, but are actually trainable skills that emerge from focused attention and accumulated experience. Enhanced perception also involves learning what not to focus on. Paradoxically, trying to see everything often results in seeing nothing clearly. Skilled perception involves filtering, learning to ignore irrelevant information while amplifying signals that matter. This requires developing clear intentions about what kind of information you're seeking and why. The digital age has both hindered and enhanced our perceptual abilities. On one hand, constant screen time and information overload have diminished many people's capacity for subtle perception. On the other hand, we now have access to tools and data that can train our perceptual abilities in ways that were impossible for previous generations. Photography, for instance, can be an excellent training ground for visual perception. The process of composing shots, noticing light and shadow, and capturing decisive moments develops your ability to see more clearly in all contexts. Similarly, meditation apps that focus on sound awareness can enhance your auditory perception, while mindfulness practices can sharpen your emotional and environmental sensitivity. The practical applications of enhanced perception are limitless. In business, it might mean recognizing market opportunities before they become obvious to competitors. In relationships, it could involve sensing what your partner needs before they have to ask. In creative work, it might manifest as seeing connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. In problem solving, it could mean noticing solutions that others have overlooked. Perhaps most importantly, enhanced perception changes your relationship with reality itself. When you begin to see more clearly, you realize that most of what you previously accepted as just the way things are was actually just the way things appeared to be. This recognition opens up possibilities for change, growth, and innovation that weren't visible before. The power of perception transforms you from a passive recipient of information into an active participant in the continuous process of discovery. Every moment becomes an opportunity to see something new, to understand something more deeply, to recognize a pattern or possibility that had been hidden in plain sight. As you develop this superpower, you'll find that the world becomes infinitely more interesting and engaging. You'll notice beauty in places you'd never seen it before, recognize opportunities in situations that previously seemed mundane, and develop insights that allow you to navigate life with greater wisdom and effectiveness. The power of perception doesn't change the world. It changes your ability to see the world as it actually is, in all its complexity, subtlety, and wonder. In a small community center in Detroit, social worker Maria Rodriguez sits across from a teenager whose anger radiates from every gesture. 16-year-old Kevin has been in and out of juvenile detention, labeled as difficult by every professional he's encountered. His file reads like a catalog of failures: truancy, theft, assault, destruction of property. Most people see a problem child destined for a life of crime, but Maria sees something different. As Kevin sits with his arms crossed, glaring at the floor, she doesn't see defiance. She sees pain. She notices the way he flinches slightly when she raises her hand to gesture, the careful distance he maintains from the door, the hypervigilance that never leaves his eyes. Maria recognizes these signs because she possesses one of humanity's most transformative superpowers: true empathy. "You don't trust adults much, do you?" she says quietly, not as an accusation but as an observation offered with understanding. For the first time in their session, Kevin looks up. Something in Maria's tone tells him she's not just another authority figure trying to fix him. She's someone who can actually see him, not just his behavior, but the frightened child behind the angry facade. This moment of connection becomes the beginning of Kevin's transformation, not because Maria has special training or revolutionary techniques, but because she can access and authentically express one of the most powerful forces in human experience: the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. Empathy is perhaps the most misunderstood of all human superpowers. It's often confused with sympathy, which is feeling sorry for someone, or with compassion, which is wanting to help alleviate suffering. While these are valuable qualities, empathy goes deeper. True empathy is the ability to step inside another person's experience so completely that you can understand their world from their perspective, feel what they feel, and see through their eyes. This superpower operates on multiple levels. Cognitive empathy involves understanding intellectually how someone else thinks and feels. Emotional empathy involves actually feeling what another person feels as if their emotions were your own. Compassionate empathy combines understanding and feeling with appropriate action, knowing what someone needs and responding in ways that truly help. The neuroscience of empathy reveals why this ability is so powerful. When we observe others experiencing emotions, specialized cells called mirror neurons fire in our brains as if we were having those experiences ourselves. This biological foundation for empathy suggests that our capacity to connect with others isn't just a social nicety, it's a fundamental aspect of how our brains are designed to function. But empathy extends far beyond these automatic neurological responses. Developed empathy requires the conscious choice to set aside your own perspective temporarily and imaginatively enter another person's reality. This involves suspending judgment, releasing assumptions, and opening yourself to experiences that might be radically different from your own. Consider Dr. James Chen, an oncologist who discovered the transformative power of empathy during his first year of practice. Initially, he approached patient interactions with clinical efficiency, focusing on diagnoses, treatment protocols, and medical facts. He was technically competent but emotionally distant. Following what he'd learned was appropriate professional behavior. Everything changed when his own father was diagnosed with the same type of cancer James treated daily. Suddenly, James found himself on the other side of the medical equation. He experienced the fear of sitting in a waiting room awaiting test results, the vulnerability of wearing a hospital gown, the way hope and despair could shift within a single conversation with a doctor. When James returned to work, his approach had fundamentally changed. He began to see his patients not as cases to be managed, but as human beings facing the most frightening experience of their lives. He started sitting down during consultations rather than standing, making eye contact rather than looking at charts, and taking time to understand not just their medical needs, but their emotional and spiritual concerns. The results were remarkable. Patients reported feeling more supported and confident in their treatment. Families felt more involved and informed. Even James's medical outcomes improved as patients became more compliant with treatments. They felt truly understood and supported in following. The power of empathy lies in its ability to bridge the fundamental isolation that each person experiences. We all live inside our own consciousness, unable to directly experience what others think and feel. Empathy creates a bridge across this divide, allowing genuine connection and understanding to occur. In relationships, empathy transforms conflict into connection. When you can truly understand why your partner responds the way they do, their behavior stops seeming irrational or personal and starts making sense within the context of their experience. This understanding doesn't mean you have to agree with everything they do, but it provides a foundation for productive dialogue rather than reactive arguments. In leadership, empathy becomes a superpower that transforms how teams function. Leaders who can understand their team members' perspectives, motivations, and challenges can create environments where people feel truly seen and valued. This leads to higher engagement, better communication, and more innovative problem solving as team members feel safe to share their ideas and concerns. The development of empathic superpowers begins with self-awareness. You cannot truly understand others until you understand yourself. This means becoming conscious of your own emotional patterns, triggers, and biases. It means recognizing when your personal experiences might be coloring how you interpret someone else's behavior. Active listening is perhaps the most practical skill in empathy development. This involves listening not just to what people say, but to what they're trying to communicate. It means paying attention to tone, body language, and emotional subtext. It requires resisting the urge to immediately respond with your own perspective or advice, and instead focusing completely on understanding their experience. Curiosity is another essential element in empathic development. Instead of making assumptions about why people behave as they do, empathic individuals ask genuine questions designed to understand rather than to prove points. They approach others with what Zen practitioners call beginner's mind, an openness to learning something new about human experience. The practice of perspective taking can be developed through imaginative exercises. When you encounter someone whose behavior puzzles or frustrates you, try to imagine their background, their current circumstances, their fears and hopes. What might have shaped their worldview? What challenges might they be facing that you can't see? This doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior, but it can help you respond more skillfully to difficult situations. Reading literature, watching films, and engaging with art from different cultures and perspectives can also develop empathic abilities. These experiences allow you to safely explore different ways of being human, expanding your understanding of the range of possible human experiences. However, developing empathy also requires learning healthy boundaries. Empathic individuals can become overwhelmed if they absorb others' emotions without filters. Learning to feel with others while maintaining your own emotional equilibrium is a crucial skill that develops with practice. The power of empathy extends beyond individual relationships to transform communities and societies. When groups of people develop genuine understanding of each other's experiences, prejudice diminishes, cooperation increases, and solutions to complex problems become possible. Empathy breaks down the us versus them thinking that underlies most social conflicts. In our increasingly polarized world, empathy becomes even more crucial. The ability to understand perspectives radically different from your own, whether political, cultural, religious, or social, becomes a superpower that can bridge divides and create possibilities for dialogue where none existed before. Maria Rodriguez's work with Kevin ultimately succeeded because she could see past his behavior to his humanity. Kevin's transformation didn't happen overnight, but it began the moment he felt truly understood by another person. That recognition that someone could see him clearly and still respond with kindness rather than judgment created the opening for healing and growth. This is the ultimate power of empathy. It creates conditions for human beings to be their best selves. When people feel understood, they become more open, more creative, more willing to take positive risks. When they feel seen and valued, they naturally want to contribute positively to the world around them. The superpower of empathy doesn't just change how you relate to others, it changes who you become. As you develop your ability to understand and connect with a wider range of human experiences, you become more compassionate, more wise, more effective in everything you do. You become someone who can bridge differences, solve complex problems, and create environments where human potential can flourish. The emergency room at Chicago General was in chaos. A major traffic accident had brought in multiple casualties, and the normal rhythm of the hospital had devolved into controlled urgency. Nurses rushed between beds, doctors shouted orders, and the air was thick with stress and adrenaline. In the middle of this storm, Dr. Sarah Kim moved with calm precision, her voice steady as she coordinated care for the most critically injured patient. What made Dr. Kim's performance remarkable wasn't just her medical expertise, it was her mastery of emotional intelligence, a superpower that allowed her to remain clear-thinking and effective under extreme pressure while simultaneously managing the emotional needs of her team, patients, and their families. When a young resident began to panic while treating a severe trauma case, Dr. Kim didn't criticize or dismiss his fear. Instead, She placed a steady hand on his shoulder and said, "I know this is overwhelming. That fear means you care about your patient, which makes you a good doctor. Now, let's use that care to help him." Her words transformed the resident's panic into focused determination. When the mother of a teenage accident victim became hysterical upon seeing her daughter's injuries, Dr. Kim sat with her for 30 seconds, an eternity in emergency medicine, and spoke with quiet authority. "I understand how terrifying this is. Your daughter needs your strength right now, and I need you to help me give her the best care possible. Can you do that?" The mother's breathing slowed, her focus returned, and she became an ally in her daughter's treatment rather than another crisis to manage. This is emotional intelligence in action, the ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotions in yourself and others, then use that awareness to guide thinking and behavior toward optimal outcomes. Emotional intelligence represents one of the most practical and immediately applicable superpowers available to humans. Unlike raw intelligence, which is largely fixed, emotional intelligence can be developed throughout your lifetime. Unlike physical abilities, which may decline with age, emotional intelligence typically improves with experience and practice. And unlike many other superpowers that seem abstract or mystical, emotional intelligence produces measurable results in every area of life. The foundation of emotional intelligence is emotional awareness, the ability to recognize and name emotions as they arise, both in yourself and others. This sounds simple, but most people have surprisingly limited emotional vocabularies. They experience the rich complexity of human emotion, but can only label it with basic terms like good, bad, stressed, or fine. Developing emotional awareness begins with expanding your emotional vocabulary. Instead of feeling angry, you might be frustrated, irritated, furious, indignant, or disappointed. Instead of feeling sad, you might be melancholic, grief-stricken, discouraged, or nostalgic. These distinctions matter because different emotions require different responses and provide different information about your needs and circumstances. Consider the story of Marcus Thompson, a high school principal in an inner-city school where tensions ran high and conflicts were common. When Marcus first took the position, he approached discipline with traditional methods, rules, consequences, and authority. The results were predictable: more conflicts, more suspensions, and a school culture built on fear rather than respect. Marcus's transformation began when he started paying attention to the emotions underlying student behavior. He realized that what appeared to be defiance was often embarrassment. What looked like aggression was frequently fear. What seemed like apathy was actually a protective mechanism against repeated disappointment. Armed with this emotional intelligence, Marcus changed his entire approach. Instead of immediately imposing consequences, he began responding to the emotions driving the behavior. When a student acted out in class, Marcus might say, "I can see you're frustrated. Help me understand what's happening." This simple shift from punishment to understanding transformed not just individual interactions, but the entire school culture. Suspension rates dropped by 70%. Academic performance improved across all measures. Most importantly, students began coming to Marcus with problems before they escalated into conflicts. They learned that their emotions were information to be understood rather than weaknesses to be hidden. The second component of emotional intelligence is emotional regulation, the ability to manage your emotions effectively rather than being controlled by them. This doesn't mean suppressing or denying emotions, which is both unhealthy and counterproductive. Instead, it means learning to experience emotions fully while maintaining the capacity to choose your responses rather than react automatically. Emotional regulation begins with the understanding that emotions are temporary experiences, not permanent states. They arise, reach a peak, and naturally subside if you don't feed them with additional thoughts or actions. Learning to observe emotions without immediately acting on them creates space for more thoughtful responses. Breathing techniques, mindfulness practices, and cognitive reframing are all tools for emotional regulation, but perhaps the most powerful technique is what psychologists call emotional granularity, the ability to make fine distinctions between different emotional states. When you can accurately identify what you're feeling, you can respond more appropriately to those feelings. The third component of emotional intelligence is emotional utilization, the ability to harness emotions as sources of information and motivation rather than viewing them as obstacles to overcome. Every emotion carries valuable data about your environment, relationships, and internal state. Learning to decode these messages transforms emotions from problems to be solved into resources to be utilized. Fear, for instance, isn't just an unpleasant feeling to be eliminated. It's information about potential threats that require attention, but not all fears are equal. The fear you feel before giving an important presentation is different from the fear you experience in a genuinely dangerous situation. Emotional intelligence allows you to distinguish between these different types of fear and respond appropriately to each. Anger, too, carries important information. It often signals that your boundaries have been violated or your values have been threatened. Emotionally intelligent individuals don't suppress anger or let it control their behavior. Instead, they use it as information to guide appropriate action, perhaps setting clearer boundaries, having difficult conversations, or advocating for necessary changes. The fourth component of emotional intelligence is social awareness, the ability to read the emotional states of others and understand how emotions impact group dynamics. This involves paying attention to nonverbal cues, listening to emotional undertones in conversations, and recognizing how your own emotional state affects those around you. Social awareness allows you to adapt your communication style to the emotional needs of different individuals and situations. You might be direct and challenging with someone who responds well to intellectual debate, while being gentle and supportive with someone who is dealing with personal struggles. This flexibility and emotional approach dramatically improves your effectiveness in all relationships. The fifth and most advanced component of emotional intelligence is relationship management, the ability to influence, coach, and mentor others through skillful emotional interaction. This involves inspiring others, managing conflict constructively, facilitating difficult conversations, and creating emotional climates that bring out the best in people. Teacher Elena Vasquez demonstrated masterful relationship management when she inherited a classroom of students who had been labeled as unteachable. These fifth graders had gone through 3 teachers in 2 years, and their reputation for disruption was legendary throughout the school. Instead of trying to impose order through strict discipline, Elena began each day by taking the emotional temperature of her classroom. She learned to recognize when individual students were having difficult mornings at home and needed extra support. She noticed when the energy of the group was scattered and implemented activities to help them focus. She celebrated emotional breakthroughs as enthusiastically as academic achievements. Most importantly, Elena taught her students emotional intelligence skills explicitly. She helped them identify their feelings, understand what triggered certain emotions, and develop strategies for managing difficult emotional states. The classroom transformed from a battleground into a community of learners who supported each other's growth. The practical applications of emotional intelligence are virtually unlimited. In leadership, it allows you to inspire and motivate others, manage teams through difficult changes, and create organizational cultures that attract and retain top talent. In sales and negotiation, it helps you understand what truly motivates your counterparts and adapt your approach accordingly. In parenting, it enables you to respond to your children's emotional needs while teaching them to manage their own emotions effectively. Perhaps most importantly, emotional intelligence improves your relationship with yourself. When you understand your own emotional patterns, triggers, and needs, you can make choices that align with your authentic self rather than reacting based on unconscious programming. You become the author of your emotional experience rather than its victim. The development of emotional intelligence is a lifelong journey that deepens with experience and conscious practice. It requires the humility to acknowledge that emotions, both yours and others, contain wisdom that pure logic cannot access. It demands the courage to feel deeply while maintaining the capacity for thoughtful action. It asks you to become fluent in the language of human emotion so that you can communicate effectively with the full spectrum of human experience. In a world that often prioritizes technical skills over human skills, emotional intelligence becomes your competitive advantage. It's the superpower that allows you to thrive in any environment because it enhances your ability to work effectively with the most complex and important element in any situation, other human beings. As Dr. Sarah Kim demonstrated in that chaotic emergency room, emotional intelligence doesn't just make you a better person, it makes you more effective at everything you do. When you can read the emotional landscape accurately and respond with wisdom and skill, you become someone who can create calm in chaos, find solutions in conflict, and bring out the best in everyone around you. This is the true power of emotional intelligence. It transforms you into someone who can navigate the complex emotional currents of human interaction with grace, wisdom, and effectiveness. In doing so, you don't just achieve better outcomes, you create conditions for others to achieve their potential as well, multiplying your positive impact exponentially. On a stage in front of 12 million viewers, comedian and talk show host Brené Brown did something that would fundamentally change how the world thinks about human connection. Instead of delivering another polished performance about resilience and success, she chose to share her own story of struggle, shame, and the terrifying journey toward wholehearted living. Vulnerability is not weakness, she told the audience, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. Vulnerability is our most accurate measurement of courage. In that moment, Brown demonstrated one of humanity's most counterintuitive superpowers, the ability to find strength through openness, connection through authenticity, and influence through the very act of removing the masks we wear to protect ourselves from judgment. The response was unprecedented. Her talk became one of the most watched TED presentations in history, sparking a global conversation about the power of vulnerability. But more importantly, it demonstrated how one person's willingness to be vulnerable can give millions of others permission to do the same. Vulnerability, as a superpower, contradicts everything we're taught about strength and success. From childhood, we learn to hide our weaknesses, project confidence, and present ourselves as having everything under control. We're told that vulnerability is dangerous, that showing our true selves will lead to rejection, exploitation, or failure. Yet research in psychology and neuroscience reveals the opposite. Vulnerability is actually the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. It's the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome. It's the willingness to invest in relationships that may or may not work out. It's the ability to acknowledge uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure as necessary elements of meaningful existence. Consider the story of CEO Jennifer Walsh, who inherited a struggling technology company on the brink of bankruptcy. Traditional business wisdom suggested projecting strength, minimizing problems, and maintaining the facade of confidence to preserve investor and employee confidence. Instead, Jennifer chose a radically different approach. At her first all-hands meeting, she stood before 500 employees and did something unprecedented. She told the truth. "I'm scared," she admitted. "This company is in serious trouble, and I don't have all the answers. What I do have is commitment to this organization and everyone in it. I need your help, your ideas, and your honest feedback about what's not working. The room was initially silent. Employees weren't accustomed to such raw honesty from leadership. But then something remarkable happened. People began sharing ideas they'd been afraid to voice. They offered solutions they'd kept to themselves. They started taking ownership of problems they'd previously seen as management's responsibility. Jennifer's vulnerability had created psychological safety, an environment where people felt secure enough to take risks, speak truthfully, and contribute their best thinking. Within 2 years, the company had not only recovered, but had become more innovative and profitable than ever before. Employees reported higher job satisfaction, and the company was recognized as one of the best places to work in its industry. The power of vulnerability operates through several psychological mechanisms. First, it creates connection through shared humanity. When you reveal your struggles, fears, or uncertainties, you remind others that they're not alone in their own challenges. This shared recognition of human imperfection creates bonds that superficial interactions cannot achieve. Second, vulnerability demonstrates courage, which is inherently attractive and inspiring. It takes strength to admit when you don't know something, to ask for help, or to acknowledge mistakes. People are drawn to those who can face uncertainty with honesty rather than hiding behind false bravado. Third, vulnerability fosters trust through authenticity. When you're willing to show your real self, including your flaws and uncertainties, others believe they're seeing the truth. This authenticity creates the foundation for deep, meaningful relationships, both personally and professionally. The development of vulnerability as a superpower begins with understanding the difference between appropriate and inappropriate vulnerability. Healthy vulnerability involves sharing your authentic experience in ways that foster connection and growth. Unhealthy vulnerability involves oversharing, using emotional disclosure to manipulate others, or being vulnerable in unsafe situations. Appropriate vulnerability is boundaried vulnerability. It means being selective about when, where, and with whom you share your deeper truths. You might be vulnerable with close friends about personal struggles, but maintain professional boundaries at work. You might share challenges you've overcome to help others facing similar situations, but avoid dumping emotional pain on people who aren't equipped to handle it. The practice of vulnerability starts small. It might mean admitting when you don't understand something in a meeting rather than pretending to know. It could involve sharing a personal story that reveals something meaningful about your values or experiences. It might include acknowledging when you've made a mistake and what you've learned from it. One of the most powerful forms of vulnerability is emotional vulnerability, the willingness to express your feelings honestly and appropriately. This doesn't mean having emotional outbursts or making others responsible for your emotional state. Instead, it means being able to say things like, "I'm feeling overwhelmed and could use some support," or "I'm excited about this opportunity, but also nervous about the challenges it presents." Creative vulnerability involves sharing your ideas, art, or innovations before they're perfect, risking criticism or rejection in service of growth and connection. Every artist, entrepreneur, or innovator must master this form of vulnerability, the courage to put something meaningful into the world without knowing how it will be received. Intellectual vulnerability means admitting the limits of your knowledge and being open to learning from others. In our culture that often rewards appearing knowledgeable, the ability to say, "I don't know," or "I was wrong," becomes a rare and valuable superpower. Physical vulnerability involves appropriate sharing of your physical presence and limitations. This might mean asking for help when you're injured, setting boundaries around physical affection, or honestly communicating your physical needs and capabilities. The cultivation of vulnerability as a superpower requires developing shame resilience, the ability to recognize shame when it arises and respond to it in healthy ways. Shame is vulnerability's greatest enemy because it tells us that we're fundamentally flawed and unworthy of connection. Learning to distinguish between shame, I am bad, and guilt, I did something bad, is crucial for maintaining the courage to be vulnerable. Building shame resilience involves developing self-compassion, treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer a good friend facing similar challenges. It means learning to speak to yourself with understanding rather than harsh criticism when you make mistakes or face difficulties. Vulnerability also requires developing discernment about safe relationships and environments. Not everyone earns the right to hear your story, and not every situation calls for emotional openness. Learning to identify trustworthy people and appropriate context for vulnerability is essential for using this superpower effectively. The ripple effects of vulnerability extend far beyond individual relationships. When leaders model vulnerability, they create cultures of psychological safety where innovation thrives. When parents demonstrate healthy vulnerability, they raise children who are more emotionally intelligent and resilient. When communities embrace vulnerability, they become more supportive and connected. In romantic relationships, vulnerability creates intimacy that transcends physical attraction or shared interests. Partners who can be vulnerable with each other develop bonds that can weather life's inevitable challenges. They create relationships based on knowing and accepting each other's full humanity rather than idealized versions of who they think they should be. In friendships, vulnerability transforms acquaintances into true companions. The friends who know your struggles as well as your successes, who've seen you at your worst and still choose to love you, become sources of strength and support that can sustain you through anything. Professional vulnerability, when appropriate, creates workplace cultures where people can take creative risks, learn from failures, and support each other's growth. Teams that can acknowledge challenges openly solve problems more effectively than those that pretend everything is always fine. The digital age has created new opportunities and challenges for vulnerability. Social media platforms can provide ways to connect authentically with others, but they can also encourage performative vulnerability, sharing personal information for attention rather than genuine connection. Learning to be vulnerable in digital spaces requires the same discernment and boundaries that offline vulnerability demands. Perhaps most importantly, vulnerability as a superpower teaches us that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear and choosing connection anyway. It's recognizing that the risk of staying disconnected and inauthentic is greater than the risk of being seen and potentially rejected. Brené Brown's moment of vulnerability on that stage didn't just change her life, it gave millions of people permission to embrace their own imperfections and seek authentic connection. This is the ultimate power of vulnerability. It's contagious. When one person has the courage to be real, it creates space for others to do the same. The superpower of vulnerability transforms not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. When you stop trying to be perfect and start trying to be real, you discover that your flaws and struggles are not obstacles to connection. They're the very things that make connection possible. In a world that often feels disconnected and superficial, the courage to be vulnerable becomes a radical act of hope and healing. In 1995, Amy Biehl's parents faced an unimaginable choice. Their 26-year-old daughter, a Stanford graduate student conducting research on voter education in South Africa, had been killed by an angry mob in a township outside Cape Town. 4 young men were convicted of her murder and sentenced to prison. The parents could have spent the rest of their lives consumed by hatred, demanding the harshest possible punishment and retreating into their grief. Instead, Peter and Linda Biehl chose forgiveness. Not only did they forgive their daughter's killers, but they also testified on behalf of 2 of them during their parole hearings helping secure their release. Even more remarkably, they hired these same young men to work in the foundation they established in Amy's memory. The murderers became advocates for peace, working alongside Amy's parents to prevent the kind of violence that had taken her life. The most important thing we can do is to live our lives in a way that honors Amy's memory, Linda Biehl explained. Holding on to anger and hatred would have dishonored everything she believed in and worked for. This extraordinary act of forgiveness demonstrates one of humanity's most transformative superpowers, the ability to release resentment, anger, and the desire for revenge, thereby freeing both the forgiver and the forgiven to create a different future. Forgiveness is perhaps the most misunderstood of all human superpowers. It's often confused with condoning harmful behavior, excusing wrongdoing, or requiring reconciliation with those who have caused harm. True forgiveness involves none of these things. Instead, forgiveness is a conscious choice to release the emotional burden of resentment and anger, regardless of whether the offending party deserves it, requests it, or even acknowledges their wrongdoing. The power of forgiveness lies not in its impact on those who have wronged us, but in its effect on ourselves. Carrying resentment is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You're the one who gets burned. Forgiveness is the decision to drop that coal, to stop allowing past hurts to poison your present experience and future possibilities. Consider the story of Maria Santos, a single mother whose ex-husband had abandoned their family, leaving her to raise 3 children alone while he started a new life with another woman. For years, Maria carried a burning anger that affected every aspect of her life. She struggled to sleep, found it difficult to trust new relationships, and often snapped at her children when they reminded her of their father. The turning point came when Maria's oldest daughter, then 16, confronted her. "Mom, I know Dad hurt you, but your anger is hurting us too. We need you to be present with us, not always thinking about what he did wrong." That conversation forced Maria to confront a painful truth. Her refusal to forgive wasn't protecting her family, it was damaging them. Her anger had become a prison that confined not just her, but everyone she loved. Maria's journey toward forgiveness wasn't quick or easy. It began with understanding that forgiveness was something she could choose regardless of her ex-husband's behavior or remorse. She started with small steps, choosing not to rehash old grievances when talking to friends, focusing on gratitude for what she had rather than resentment for what she'd lost, and redirecting her energy toward building a positive future for her children. The transformation was gradual but profound. As Maria released her grip on anger, she found space for joy to return to her life. Her relationship with her children deepened as she became more emotionally available. She eventually met and married a man who appreciated her strength and resilience, creating the loving family environment she'd always wanted. Most surprisingly, her forgiveness even affected her ex-husband. Years later, he reached out to apologize and to establish a better relationship with his children. Maria's decision to forgive had created space for healing that wouldn't have been possible while she was consumed with resentment. The neuroscience of forgiveness reveals why this superpower is so transformative. Holding on to anger and resentment keeps the brain's stress response system chronically activated, flooding the body with hormones that impair immune function, disrupt sleep, and contribute to various health problems. Forgiveness literally changes brain chemistry, reducing stress hormones and increasing the production of feel-good neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. But forgiveness operates on levels beyond individual psychology. It has the power to break cycles of violence and retribution that can span generations. When someone chooses forgiveness over revenge, they interrupt patterns of harm that might otherwise continue indefinitely. The development of forgiveness as a superpower begins with understanding what forgiveness is and what it isn't. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It doesn't require you to trust someone who has betrayed you or to continue relationships with people who continue to cause harm. It doesn't mean giving up on justice or accountability. Instead, forgiveness is about freeing yourself from the emotional burden of carrying someone else's wrongdoing. It's choosing to define yourself by your response to adversity rather than by what was done to you. It's recognizing that you have the power to determine your emotional state regardless of others' actions. The process of forgiveness often begins with acknowledging the full extent of the hurt. This might seem counterintuitive. Why revisit painful experiences when trying to let them go? But suppressed emotions tend to maintain their power over us. Only by fully feeling and acknowledging the impact of harm can we begin to release it. Understanding the difference between the person and their actions is crucial for forgiveness. This doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior, but rather recognizing that all humans are complex beings capable of both harm and good. The person who hurt you may have been acting from their own pain, fear, or limitation. This understanding doesn't justify their actions, but it can help you see them as a flawed human being rather than a monster. Self-forgiveness is often the most challenging aspect of developing the superpower. Many people find it easier to forgive others than to forgive themselves for their own mistakes, poor choices, or failures. Yet self-forgiveness is essential for psychological health and personal growth. It involves accepting responsibility for your actions while releasing self-punishment that serves no constructive purpose. The practice of forgiveness can be developed through various techniques. Some people find benefit in writing letters to those who have hurt them, letters they may never send, but that help them process and release their emotions. Others find value in meditation practices that involve sending loving kindness to themselves and others. Some benefit from therapy or counseling that helps them work through complex emotions and develop healthy coping strategies. Ritual can also play a powerful role in forgiveness, creating ceremonies that symbolically represent letting go, such as writing grievances on paper and burning them, or releasing balloons to represent releasing resentment, can help make the internal process of forgiveness more concrete and memorable. The timing of forgiveness varies greatly among individuals and situations. Some hurts can be forgiven relatively quickly, while others may require years of processing. There's no universal timeline for forgiveness, and attempting to force it before you're ready can be counterproductive. Forgiveness is a process, not an event, and it often happens in layers over time. Forgiveness becomes particularly challenging in cases of severe trauma, abuse, or loss. In these situations, it's crucial to understand that forgiveness doesn't mean minimizing the severity of what happened or rushing to get over it. It means gradually releasing the grip that traumatic experiences have on your present life, often with the support of trained professionals. The collective power of forgiveness can transform entire communities and societies. Truth and reconciliation processes in countries like South Africa and Rwanda have demonstrated how organized efforts at forgiveness and reconciliation can help nations heal from devastating conflicts. These examples show that forgiveness is not just a personal superpower, but a social one that can break cycles of violence and create possibilities for peaceful coexistence. In families, forgiveness can heal relationships that span generations. Children who grow up witnessing healthy approaches to conflict resolution and forgiveness learn to manage their own relationships more effectively. They develop resilience and emotional intelligence that serves them throughout their lives. Religious and spiritual traditions have long recognized forgiveness as a central human capacity, whether expressed through Christian concepts of grace, Buddhist ideas about letting go of attachment, or secular humanistic values about compassion and understanding. The wisdom of forgiveness appears across cultures and belief systems. The digital age has created new challenges and opportunities for forgiveness. Social media can amplify hurts and make it harder to move past conflicts, but it can also provide platforms for reconciliation and public apologies that might reach people who were harmed. Perhaps most importantly, forgiveness as a superpower teaches us that we have more control over our emotional experience than we often realize. We cannot control what others do to us, but we can control how long we allow their actions to affect our well-being. This recognition is profoundly empowering. It means that no one else has the power to determine your emotional future unless you give it to them. The Biehl's choice to forgive their daughter's killers didn't bring Amy back, but it prevented her death from creating additional victims. Their forgiveness transformed a story of senseless violence into one of redemption and hope. It demonstrated that even in the face of unimaginable loss, humans have the power to choose love over hate, healing over revenge, and life over death. This is the ultimate power of forgiveness. It's an act of creative transformation that can turn the worst human experiences into sources of wisdom, compassion, and positive change. When you develop this superpower, you become someone who cannot be permanently damaged by others' actions because you have the ability to transform even the deepest hurts into opportunities for growth and healing. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it liberates the future. It's the superpower that allows you to write the next chapter of your story rather than remaining trapped in chapters that others have written for you. In 2009, a young software engineer named Stuart Butterfield faced a crisis. His video game startup had burned through millions in funding and was failing spectacularly. The game that was supposed to revolutionize online entertainment was confusing, slow, and unpopular. Most entrepreneurs would have shut down, cut their losses, and moved on to other projects. Instead, Butterfield made a decision that would demonstrate one of the most sophisticated superpowers in human interaction, the power of influence. Rather than trying to force his team to believe in a failing product or manipulate investors with false optimism, he chose a different path entirely. Butterfield gathered his team and acknowledged the obvious. Their game wasn't working. But then he pointed out something they had all noticed but hadn't fully appreciated. While developing the game, they had created an internal communication tool to coordinate their work, a simple system that allowed team members to share messages, files, and updates in organized channels. What if, Butterfield suggested, the thing we built to help us make our game is actually more valuable than the game itself? This wasn't manipulation or coercion. Butterfield wasn't using authority, threats, or even passionate persuasion. Instead, he was exercising the power of influence, helping others see possibilities they hadn't recognized, and inspiring them to pursue a vision that aligned with their own interests and values. That internal communication tool became Slack, which sold to Salesforce in 2021 for $27.7 billion. Butterfield's ability to influence his team to see potential where others saw failure transformed not just their company, but the way millions of people communicate at work. The power of influence is perhaps the most subtle and sophisticated of all human superpowers. Unlike authority, which relies on position or force, influence works through connection, understanding, and alignment. Unlike manipulation, which serves the manipulator's interests at others' expense, true influence creates value for everyone involved. Influence operates through trust, credibility, and emotional resonance. It's the ability to help others see new possibilities, understand different perspectives, and voluntarily choose actions that serve both their interests and yours. When exercised ethically, influence becomes a superpower that can create positive change at any scale, from personal relationships to global movements. Consider the story of Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a public health official who faced one of the most challenging influence situations imaginable, convincing a community with deep vaccine skepticism to participate in a childhood immunization program. Traditional approaches had failed miserably. Educational campaigns filled with statistics and medical jargon had been ignored. Authoritative demands from government officials had triggered resistance. Fear-based messaging had backfired, increasing rather than decreasing opposition. Dr. Martinez chose a radically different approach. Instead of trying to overcome resistance, she sought to understand it. She spent weeks in the community, not lecturing about vaccines, but listening to parents' concerns. She attended school board meetings, visited local churches, and sat in coffee shops, simply listening to what people were really worried about. What she discovered changed everything. The resistance wasn't primarily about vaccine safety. It was about trust. Parents felt that outside experts were dismissing their concerns, making decisions about their children without understanding their values and priorities. They felt unheard and disrespected. Armed with this understanding, Dr. Martinez shifted her entire strategy. Instead of presenting herself as an authority figure dispensing medical wisdom, she positioned herself as a partner in protecting children's health. She acknowledged parents' concerns as legitimate and worked with local leaders to address them. She arranged for pediatricians from the community, doctors parents already trusted, to host informal discussion sessions where questions could be asked without judgment. She connected concerned parents with other parents who had wrestled with the same decisions. Most importantly, she made the conversation about shared values, keeping children healthy and safe, rather than about compliance with medical recommendations. The transformation was remarkable. Vaccination rates increased from 34% to 87% over 2 years. But perhaps more importantly, Dr. Martinez had built lasting trust between the community and public health officials, creating a foundation for future collaboration on health initiatives. The power of influence Dr. Martinez demonstrated operates through several key principles. First, it begins with genuine understanding of others' perspectives, values, and concerns. You cannot influence people effectively if you don't understand what matters to them and why they think the way they think. Second, effective influence aligns proposed actions with people's existing values and interests rather than trying to convince them to adopt new values. Dr. Martinez didn't try to make parents care more about public health. She helped them see how vaccination aligned with their existing commitment to protecting their children. Third, true influence creates psychological safety for people to change their minds without losing face. When people feel attacked or judged for their current position, they're more likely to become entrenched in that position. Creating space for graceful transitions makes influence more likely to succeed. The development of influence as a superpower begins with self-awareness and authenticity. People are remarkably good at detecting when someone is trying to manipulate them for selfish purposes. Authentic influence comes from genuine desire to create mutually beneficial outcomes, not from trying to get others to do what you want regardless of their interests. Credibility is the foundation of influence. This comes from demonstrating competence in your area of expertise, maintaining consistency between your words and actions, and showing genuine care for others' well-being. Credibility is built slowly over time, but can be destroyed quickly through dishonesty or self-serving behavior. Emotional intelligence is crucial for influence because it allows you to understand how others are feeling and to communicate in ways that resonate emotionally as well as logically. People make decisions based on emotions and then use logic to justify those decisions. Influence that ignores the emotional dimension of decision-making is rarely effective. Active listening is perhaps the most powerful tool for developing influence. When people feel heard and understood, they become more open to considering new perspectives. This involves listening not just to what people say, but to what they're trying to communicate, their underlying concerns, values, and aspirations. Storytelling is another crucial element of influence. Abstract ideas and logical arguments are often forgettable, but stories create emotional connections and help people envision how concepts apply to their own lives. The most influential people are often skilled storytellers who can illustrate their points with compelling narratives. The ability to find common ground is essential for influence in diverse or polarized situations. This involves identifying shared values, mutual interests, or common goals that can serve as starting points for building agreement. Even when people disagree about solutions, they often share similar underlying concerns or aspirations. Timing is a critical factor in influence. The same message delivered at different times can have vastly different effects. Understanding when people are most open to new ideas, often during periods of transition, challenge, or opportunity, can dramatically increase your influence. The power of influence extends beyond individual interactions to shape organizational cultures, social movements, and historical change. Leaders who master this superpower can inspire teams to achieve extraordinary results, not through coercion, but through creating compelling visions that people want to be part of. Consider how civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. exercise influence. They didn't rely primarily on legal arguments or political pressure, though these were important. Instead, they influenced hearts and minds by helping people see moral contradictions in existing systems and by painting compelling pictures of what a more just society could look like. Modern social entrepreneurs demonstrate influence by identifying social problems and creating innovative solutions that attract others to their cause. They influence not through authority, but by demonstrating the possibility of positive change and making it easy for others to participate. In business, the most effective leaders are those who can influence stakeholders, employees, customers, investors, partners, to embrace shared visions and work together toward common goals. This involves understanding what motivates different groups and communicating in ways that resonate with their specific interests and values. The digital age has created new opportunities and challenges for influence. Social media platforms can amplify influence by allowing messages to reach vast audiences, but they can also enable the spread of misinformation and manipulation. Learning to exercise ethical influence in digital environments requires understanding how different platforms work and how online communication differs from face-to-face interaction. Perhaps most importantly, influence as a superpower requires a commitment to ethical use. The same techniques that can be used to inspire positive change can also be used to manipulate others for selfish purposes. The responsibility that comes with developing influence skills includes using them in ways that serve the greater good rather than merely personal advantage. The ripple effects of ethical influence extend far beyond immediate interactions. When you influence others to embrace positive values and behaviors, they often become influencers themselves, spreading beneficial changes throughout their networks. This creates exponential impact that can transform communities and organizations. Stuart Butterfield's influence over his team didn't just create a successful company, it demonstrated a model of leadership that prioritizes truth, possibility, and mutual benefit over ego or short-term thinking. The culture he helped create at Slack influenced how thousands of other companies think about workplace communication and collaboration. This is the ultimate power of influence. It's a superpower that multiplies itself. When you develop the ability to help others see new possibilities and choose positive actions, you don't just change individual outcomes, you change the way change happens. You become someone who can catalyze transformation in ways that create lasting, positive impact for everyone involved. The power of influence transforms you from someone who tries to force the world to conform to your will into someone who can shape the world by helping others discover their own reasons to create positive change. In doing so, you become a force for transformation that works with human nature rather than against it, creating changes that are both more sustainable and more beneficial for everyone involved. In 2016, a 19-year-old college sophomore named Emma González was just another student at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. She was involved in drama club, interested in creative writing, and planning a future that probably involved college, career, and the typical milestones of American adulthood. Then, on February 14, 2018, a gunman opened fire at her school, killing 17 people and wounding 17 others. In the aftermath of this tragedy, Emma could have grieved privately, relied on others to seek solutions, or accepted that such violence was simply an unfortunate reality of modern life. Instead, she discovered and activated one of humanity's most powerful superpowers, the ability to transform individual pain into collective action that creates systemic change. 3 days after the shooting, Emma stood at a podium and delivered a speech that would galvanize a movement. "We call BS," she declared, her voice steady with conviction. "Politicians who sit in their gilded House and Senate seats funded by the NRA telling us nothing could have been done to prevent this. We call BS." That speech and the movement it helped launch demonstrated how individual courage can spark collective action that transforms society. Within weeks, student-led organizations had formed across the country. The March for Our Lives became one of the largest single-day protests in American history, with an estimated 1.2 to 2 million participants. More importantly, the movement registered hundreds of thousands of young voters and influenced electoral outcomes that shifted the national conversation about gun policy. The power of collective action represents the multiplication of individual effort into forces capable of changing systems, institutions, and societies. It's the recognition that while individual actions matter, coordinated group effort can accomplish what no single person could achieve alone. This superpower operates through several key mechanisms. First, it amplifies individual voices by joining them with others who share similar concerns or goals. A single person expressing frustration with injustice might be ignored, but thousands or millions of people expressing the same frustration becomes impossible to dismiss. Second, collective action distributes the risks and costs of seeking change. Individuals who challenge powerful systems or institutions often face retaliation, but when many people take action together, it becomes much harder to target any single person for punishment. Third, collective action creates what social scientists call efficacy, the belief that change is possible. When people see others taking action alongside them, they develop confidence that their efforts can make a difference, which motivates continued participation and draws additional supporters. Consider the story of Wangari Maathai, who in 1977 began what seemed like a simple environmental project in Kenya, concerned about deforestation and its impact on rural women who depended on wood for fuel and water from forested watersheds. Maathai started the Greenbelt movement by encouraging women to plant trees. The beginning was humble, just a few women planting seedlings in their yards, but Maathai understood that environmental problems were connected to broader issues of poverty, women's rights, and political oppression. As the tree planting movement grew, it became a vehicle for addressing these interconnected challenges. Women who joined the movement didn't just plant trees, they developed leadership skills, gained economic independence through tree nurseries, and began advocating for their rights in other areas. The movement spread across Kenya and eventually throughout Africa, resulting in the planting of over 51 million trees and the empowerment of hundreds of thousands of women. What started as an environmental project became a force for democratization and human rights. The collective action Maathai sparked helped challenge authoritarian government policies and contributed to political reforms that transformed Kenya. In 2004, she became the first African woman to receive the Nobel Peace Prize, recognition that her tree planting movement had grown into something far more significant. The development of collective action as a superpower begins with understanding how social change actually happens. Contrary to popular narratives that focus on individual heroes, most significant social, political, and economic changes result from the coordinated efforts of many people working together over time. Successful collective action requires several key elements. First, it needs a clear, compelling vision that people can understand and rally around. This vision must be specific enough to guide action, but broad enough to attract diverse supporters. The civil rights movement's goal of ending racial segregation, the women's suffrage movement's focus on voting rights, and the environmental movement's emphasis on protecting the planet all provided such unifying visions. Second, effective collective action requires strong organizational structures that can coordinate efforts, maintain momentum, and adapt strategies based on changing circumstances. This doesn't necessarily mean formal organizations. Some of the most powerful collective actions have emerged from informal networks and grassroots organizing, but it does require some way of bringing people together and channeling their energy effectively. Third, collective action needs diverse forms of participation that allow people with different skills, resources, and comfort levels to contribute meaningfully. Some people are natural public speakers who can address rallies and media. Others prefer behind-the-scenes work like organizing, fundraising, or research. Still others contribute through their professional skills, financial resources, or simply by showing up to demonstrations or events. The digital age has dramatically expanded the possibilities for collective action while also creating new challenges. Social media platforms can help organizers reach vast audiences, coordinate activities, and share resources in ways that would have been impossible for previous generations of activists. The Me Too movement demonstrates both the power and complexity of digital collective action. Starting with individual stories shared on social media, the movement quickly grew into a global phenomenon that exposed widespread patterns of sexual harassment and assault. The collective sharing of individual experiences created a massive cultural shift in how society discusses and responds to sexual misconduct. However, digital collective action also faces challenges, including the spread of misinformation, the difficulty of maintaining momentum online, and the tendency for digital engagement to sometimes substitute for more sustained forms of organizing. The most effective collective action combines digital tools with traditional organizing methods, using online platforms to identify and connect potential participants while building real-world relationships and organizations that can sustain long-term efforts. Economic collective action has transformed working conditions and economic opportunities throughout history. Labor unions demonstrate how workers can use collective bargaining to negotiate better wages, safer working conditions, and fairer treatment. Consumer boycotts show how collective purchasing decisions can pressure companies to change harmful practices. Modern examples include the fair trade movement, which uses collective consumer action to support better working conditions and environmental practices, and divestment campaigns that use collective investment decisions to pressure institutions to change policies. Environmental collective action has become increasingly crucial as climate change and other environmental challenges require coordinated responses that no individual or single nation can address alone. From local community gardens to global climate protests, environmental movements demonstrate how collective action can address problems that span multiple scales and time horizons. The Paris Climate Agreement represents collective action at the international level, with nearly 200 countries coordinating their efforts to address climate change. While implementation faces significant challenges, the agreement demonstrates that even the most complex global problems can be addressed through collective action. Cultural collective action shapes social norms and values, through coordinated efforts to promote new ways of thinking and behaving. The LGBTQ+ rights movement transformed societal attitudes towards sexual and gender diversity through decades of collective action that included legal advocacy, cultural representation, and community organizing. The power of collective action extends beyond addressing problems to creating positive innovations and opportunities. Open source software development demonstrates how thousands of programmers can collaborate to create technologies that benefit everyone. Wikipedia shows how collective knowledge sharing can create resources that no individual or organization could produce alone. Citizen science projects allow ordinary people to contribute to scientific research by collecting data, identifying patterns, or participating in experiments. These projects demonstrate how collective action can advance human knowledge and understanding in ways that traditional research institutions couldn't achieve on their own. The development of collective action superpowers requires understanding both the possibilities and limitations of group effort. While collective action can achieve remarkable results, it also faces challenges, including coordination difficulties, conflicting priorities among participants, and the tendency for large groups to become unwieldy or ineffective. Successful participation in collective action involves finding ways to contribute your unique skills and resources while also supporting the efforts of others. It requires balancing individual initiative with group coordination, maintaining long-term commitment while adapting to changing circumstances, and staying focused on shared goals while respecting diverse perspectives and approaches. Perhaps most importantly, collective action as a superpower requires hope, the belief that change is possible and that individual efforts, when combined with others, can create meaningful improvements in the world. This hope isn't naive optimism, but rather a realistic assessment that human beings working together have consistently demonstrated the ability to solve problems, create innovations, and build better systems. Emma González's speech after the Parkland shooting didn't create the gun violence prevention movement. Advocates had been working on these issues for decades, but her willingness to speak out, combined with the collective action of thousands of other students, transformed a long-standing advocacy effort into a powerful force for change that influenced elections, policies, and public opinion. This is the ultimate power of collective action. It's the superpower that allows individual passion and commitment to scale up into forces capable of transforming the world. When you develop this ability, you become someone who doesn't just witness change. You become someone who can catalyze and participate in creating the changes the world needs. The power of collective action transforms isolated individuals into members of communities working toward shared goals. It turns personal problems into social movements and individual talents into collective capabilities that can address challenges no single person could solve alone. In an interconnected world facing complex challenges, this superpower becomes essential for anyone who wants to make a meaningful difference. In 1998, the small African nation of Rwanda was still reeling from one of the most devastating genocides in human history. In just 100 days, 4 years earlier, an estimated 800,000 to 1 million people had been killed, leaving the country traumatized, divided, and seemingly beyond repair. Traditional justice systems were overwhelmed. There were simply too many cases and too few courts to address the massive scale of violence that had occurred. Into this seemingly impossible situation stepped an ancient tradition that would demonstrate one of humanity's most underutilized superpowers, the power of deep, intentional listening. The Rwandan government, working with community leaders, decided to revive the traditional Gacaca court system, community-based forums where conflicts had been resolved for generations through dialogue, testimony, and collective truth-seeking. The cornerstone of Gacaca was not judgment or punishment, but listening. Survivors were given space to tell their stories, to describe their losses and their pain. Perpetrators were encouraged to confess their actions and explain their motivations. Community members gathered to listen, not to interrupt, argue, or immediately forgive, but simply to bear witness to the truth of what had happened. Facilitator Jean-Baptiste Nizeyimana described the power he witnessed in these sessions. When people felt truly heard, when their suffering was acknowledged and their truth was received, something shifted, not immediately and not completely, but something open that hadn't been open before. The listening itself became a form of healing. Over the course of several years, approximately 12,000 Gacaca courts processed over 1 million cases. While the system wasn't perfect and couldn't heal all wounds, it demonstrated something remarkable. The simple act of listening, really listening, could begin to repair damage that seemed irreparable. This is the power of listening as a superpower. It's the ability to create space for others to be fully human, to feel seen and understood, and to experience the profound healing that comes from having their truth received without judgment. Listening is perhaps the most taken for granted of all human abilities. We assume that because we have ears and can process sound, we know how to listen. But true listening, the kind that transforms relationships, resolves conflicts, and heals wounds, is a sophisticated skill that most people never fully develop. The difference between hearing and listening is like the difference between looking and seeing. Hearing is the passive reception of sound waves. Listening is the active, intentional process of receiving, understanding, and responding to another person's communication in ways that make them feel valued and understood. Consider the story of Dr. Rachel Thompson, an emergency room physician who discovered the power of listening during one of the most challenging periods of her career. The hospital where she worked was understaffed, overcrowded, and dealing with increasing numbers of patients struggling with mental health crises alongside their physical ailments. Dr. Thompson had been trained to diagnose and treat medical conditions efficiently, but she found herself increasingly frustrated by patients who seemed to need something she wasn't equipped to provide. They would return repeatedly with vague complaints, multiple symptoms that didn't clearly point to specific diagnoses, or physical ailments that seemed connected to emotional distress. The breakthrough came during a particularly busy night shift when an elderly man named Robert arrived with chest pain. His cardiac tests came back normal, but he seemed reluctant to leave. Instead of rushing him out to make room for other patients, Dr. Thompson decided to try something different. She sat down and simply asked him to tell her what was really wrong. What emerged was a story of profound loneliness. Robert's wife had died 6 months earlier. His children lived far away, and he was struggling with depression and isolation. His chest pain was real, but it was manifestation of emotional pain that had no other outlet. As Dr. Thompson listened, really listened, to his story, Robert's whole demeanor changed. His breathing became calmer, his posture relaxed, and for the first time in months, he felt like someone truly understood what he was going through. This experience transformed Dr. Thompson's approach to medicine. She began incorporating what she called listening diagnosis into her practice, taking time to understand not just her patients' physical symptoms, but their emotional and social contexts. While this initially seemed like it would slow down her efficiency, the opposite proved true. Patients who felt heard were more likely to provide accurate information about their symptoms, more compliant with treatment recommendations, and less likely to return with recurring problems. The power of listening operates through several psychological mechanisms. First, it provides validation, the experience of feeling seen, understood, and valued. This validation is a fundamental human need that, when met, reduces anxiety, builds self-esteem, and creates conditions for healing and growth. Second, listening creates psychological safety. an environment where people feel secure enough to be vulnerable, share difficult truths, and explore complex emotions. This safety is essential for meaningful communication, creative problem solving, and relationship building. Third, listening facilitates what psychologists call emotional regulation. When people can express their feelings to someone who receives them without judgment, they often experience a natural calming effect. The very act of putting emotions into words and having them heard can reduce their intensity and make them more manageable. The development of listening as a superpower begins with understanding the barriers that prevent most people from listening effectively. Perhaps the biggest barrier is the tendency to listen with the intent to respond rather than the intent to understand. Most people spend conversation time planning what they're going to say next rather than fully absorbing what the other person is communicating. Another major barrier is the urge to fix, advise, or solve problems immediately. While these impulses often come from genuine care, they can prevent the deeper understanding that comes from simply allowing someone to be heard. Sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is resist the urge to immediately offer solutions and instead create space for people to process their own thoughts and feelings. Judgment is another listening barrier. When we approach conversations with preconceived notions about what people should think, feel, or do, we filter their communications through our own biases rather than receiving their actual messages. Suspending judgment requires conscious effort but dramatically improves listening effectiveness. The practice of deep listening involves several specific skills. Active attention means giving someone your complete focus, putting away distractions, making appropriate eye contact, and using body language that signals engagement and openness. Reflective responses involve periodically summarizing or paraphrasing what you've heard to ensure understanding and to show the speaker that their message is being received. This might sound like, "It sounds like you're feeling frustrated because," or "What I'm hearing is that the main challenge is." Emotional attunement involves paying attention not just to the content of what someone is saying, but to the emotions underlying their words. This includes noticing tone of voice, facial expressions, and body language that might convey feelings the speaker isn't explicitly stating. Questions that promote deeper sharing are open-ended and focused on understanding rather than gathering specific information. Instead of asking, "Did that make you angry?" you might ask, "How did that affect you?" Or, "What was that experience like for you?" The power of listening extends far beyond individual conversations to transform organizations, communities, and societies. In business, leaders who master listening skills create cultures where employees feel valued and engaged, leading to higher productivity, innovation, and retention. Consider the transformation of global consulting firm McKinsey & Company under the leadership of Rajat Gupta in the 1990s. Gupta implemented what he called listening tours, systematic efforts to hear from employees at all levels about their experiences, concerns, and ideas for improvement. These weren't just feedback sessions, but genuine attempts to understand how different people experience the organization. The insights gained from these listening efforts led to significant changes in company culture, career development programs, and client service approaches. More importantly, they created a culture where listening became valued as a leadership skill, leading to better client relationships and more effective problem solving. In healthcare, the power of listening has been formalized through approaches like narrative medicine, which recognizes that understanding patients' stories is as important as understanding their symptoms. Doctors who practice narrative medicine report greater job satisfaction, better patient relationships, and improved treatment outcomes. Educational institutions that prioritize listening create environments where students feel valued and supported. Teachers who master listening skills are better able to understand their students' learning needs, emotional challenges, and creative potential. In conflict resolution, listening is often the first and most crucial step toward finding solutions. Mediators and negotiators understand that people need to feel heard before they can move toward compromise or agreement. The process of truly listening to all parties often reveals underlying interests and concerns that weren't initially apparent. Family therapy demonstrates how listening can heal relationships that seem beyond repair. When family members learn to listen to each other without immediately defending, attacking, or trying to change each other, they often discover that many of their conflicts stem from misunderstandings rather than fundamental incompatibilities. The digital age has created both opportunities and challenges for deep listening. Technology can connect us with people across vast distances and provide new platforms for sharing stories and experiences. However, the speed and volume of digital communication can also work against the patience and attention that effective listening requires. Developing listening superpowers in digital environments requires conscious adaptation of traditional listening skills. This might involve reading messages carefully rather than skimming, asking follow-up questions to ensure understanding, and using video calls when possible to pick up on visual cues that text-based communication misses. Perhaps most importantly, the power of listening requires recognizing that silence is often more valuable than speech. In our culture, that often equates talking with intelligence and silence with disengagement. Learning to be comfortable with quiet moments allows space for deeper thoughts and feelings to emerge. The ripple effects of deep listening extend far beyond immediate conversations. When people feel truly heard, they become more capable of listening to others. Children who grow up being listened to develop better communication skills and emotional intelligence. Communities that prioritize listening create cultures of mutual respect and understanding. The power of listening also transforms the listener. When you develop the ability to truly hear others, you become more empathetic, more understanding, and more effective in all your relationships. You gain access to information and perspectives that can dramatically improve your decision-making and problem-solving abilities. In Rwanda, the Gacaca courts didn't solve all the country's problems or heal every wound left by genocide, but they demonstrated that even in the face of unimaginable trauma, the simple act of listening, creating space for truth to be told and pain to be acknowledged, could begin processes of healing that seemed impossible. This is the ultimate power of listening. It's a superpower that creates space for human beings to be fully themselves, to feel valued and understood, and to experience the connection that makes healing, growth, and positive change possible. When you master this ability, you become someone who can transform relationships, resolve conflicts, and create environments where human potential can flourish. The power of listening reminds us that sometimes the most profound action we can take is to step back, be present, and allow others to share their truth. In a world full of noise, opinion, and constant chatter, the ability to create quiet space for others to be heard becomes a rare and precious gift, one that has the power to heal wounds, bridge differences, and create connections that can transform both individuals and communities. In 1953, a young neurosurgery patient known to science as H.M. underwent an experimental procedure to treat his severe epilepsy. Surgeons removed portions of his hippocampus, forever changing not only his life, but our understanding of human memory. H.M. could no longer form new memories. Each day, each conversation, each experience vanished moments after it occurred. He lived in a perpetual present, unable to learn new facts or remember new faces. This tragic case revealed something profound about human consciousness. Memory isn't just a storage system for past events. It's the foundation of identity, the architect of reality, and one of our most powerful superpowers. Without memory, H.M. lost not just his past, but his ability to imagine a future, to learn from experience, or to maintain lasting relationships. For most of us, memory operates so seamlessly that we take it for granted. Yet neuroscientist Dr. Patricia Chen discovered just how extraordinary this superpower could become when properly understood and developed. Struggling with the overwhelming amount of information required in her graduate studies, Patricia felt her career prospects dimming as she watched classmates effortlessly recall complex molecular structures while she struggled to remember basic biochemical pathways. Everything changed when Patricia encountered the ancient Greek and Roman art of memory, sophisticated techniques that allowed orators to deliver hours-long speeches without notes and scholars to memorize entire libraries of knowledge. These weren't tricks or gimmicks, but systematic methods for leveraging the brain's natural architecture to achieve seemingly impossible feats of recall. Patricia began experimenting with these techniques, starting with the method of Lochi, a system that involves creating vivid mental journeys through familiar spaces and placing information at specific locations along these routes. Instead of trying to memorize abstract chemical formulas, she began placing them in dramatic, memorable scenes throughout her childhood home. The transformation was dramatic. Within months, Patricia could recall not just individual facts, but entire networks of scientific knowledge. More importantly, this enhanced memory didn't just improve her test performance, it fundamentally changed how she thought about problems. With vast amounts of information instantly accessible, she could see connections and patterns that had previously been hidden. This enhanced memory became the foundation for Patricia's breakthrough research on Alzheimer's disease. Her ability to hold complex data sets in her mind allowed her to recognize subtle patterns in patient data that others had missed. The memory techniques that had saved her academic career ultimately led to discoveries that could help millions of people preserve their own memories as they age. The power of memory operates on multiple levels. At its most basic, it's the ability to encode, store, and retrieve information. But at its most sophisticated, memory becomes the foundation for learning, creativity, and wisdom. It's the superpower that allows us to build upon past experiences, recognize patterns across different situations, and imagine possibilities that don't yet exist. Memory shapes identity in profound ways. You are, in many senses, the sum of your memories. The experiences you remember, the lessons you've learned, the people you've known, these memories form the narrative of your life and influence every decision you make. When memory fails, as in cases of dementia or amnesia, identity itself becomes fragmented. But memory isn't just passive storage, it's an active creative process. Every time you remember something, you're not accessing a fixed recording, but reconstructing the experience based on various cues and associations. This reconstructive nature of memory means that how you remember events can be more important than what actually happened. The development of memory as a superpower begins with understanding how memory actually works. The brain doesn't store information like a computer hard drive, with each piece of data in a specific location. Instead, memories are distributed networks of neural connections that strengthen through repetition and association. This understanding reveals why traditional rote learning is often ineffective. Simply repeating information doesn't create the rich network of associations that make memories accessible and useful. Instead, the most powerful memory techniques work by creating multiple pathways to the same information through vivid imagery, emotional associations, and logical connections. The ancient memory techniques that transformed Patricia's academic career are based on several key principles. The first is visualization. The brain remembers images far better than abstract information. When you transform a list of facts into a series of vivid mental pictures, you engage multiple neural systems that make the information more memorable. The second principle is association, connecting new information to things you already know. The method of Loci works because it links new information to familiar spatial memories, which are among the strongest and most persistent types of memory. The third principle is emotional engagement. Memories tied to strong emotions are more likely to be retained and recalled. This is why we remember traumatic events so vividly, but it also explains why adding humor, surprise, or personal significance to information makes it more memorable. Modern neuroscience has validated these ancient insights while revealing new understanding about memory's role in learning and creativity. Working memory, the ability to hold and manipulate information in your mind, is crucial for complex thinking, problem solving, and learning new skills. Like a mental workspace, working memory allows you to combine different pieces of information to generate new insights. Long-term memory isn't just storage, but the foundation for expertise in any field. Chess masters don't just remember more chess positions than beginners. They remember meaningful patterns that allow them to see the game differently. Similarly, experts in any field develop rich networks of memories that enable pattern recognition, intuitive decision-making, and creative problem-solving. The practice of developing memory superpowers involves both specific techniques and general lifestyle factors. Sleep is crucial for memory consolidation, the process by which temporary memories become permanent. During sleep, the brain replays and strengthens the neural pathways formed during waking hours. Physical exercise enhances memory by promoting the growth of new brain cells and improving connections between different brain regions. Regular aerobic exercise has been shown to increase the size of the hippocampus, the brain region most crucial for forming new memories. Nutrition also plays a vital role in memory function. The brain consumes about 20% of the body's energy, and certain nutrients are particularly important for optimal cognitive function. Omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, and B vitamins all support memory and overall brain health. Stress management is essential for memory because chronic stress hormones can actually damage the hippocampus and impair memory formation. Mindfulness meditation, regular exercise, and effective stress management techniques all support memory function. The digital age has created both challenges and opportunities for memory development. While we have unprecedented access to information, our reliance on external memory aids, smartphones, GPS systems, search engines, may be weakening our natural memory abilities. The phenomenon of Google effect shows that we're less likely to remember information when we know it's easily accessible online. However, technology can also enhance memory when used appropriately. Spaced repetition systems use algorithms to present information at optimal intervals for long-term retention. Digital tools can help create and organize the visual and spatial memory aids that make ancient techniques more accessible. The social dimension of memory reveals another aspect of this superpower. Shared memories create bonds between people and form the foundation of culture and community. Families pass down stories, communities preserve histories, and cultures maintain their identity through collective memory. Personal memory techniques can enhance social connections by helping you remember names, faces, and important details about people's lives. The simple act of remembering someone's birthday, their children's names, or a conversation from months ago demonstrates care and attention that strengthens relationships. Professional applications of enhanced memory are virtually limitless. Doctors who can recall vast amounts of medical knowledge make more accurate diagnoses. Lawyers who remember case details and legal precedents present more compelling arguments. Teachers who remember their students' individual needs and progress create more effective learning environments. Creative applications of memory involve using enhanced recall to support innovation and artistic expression. Writers who can remember rich details from their experiences create more vivid and authentic narratives. Musicians who have vast repertoires memorize can improvise more freely and expressively. The therapeutic applications of memory work include helping people recover from trauma by changing how they remember difficult experiences. While you cannot erase traumatic memories, you can change their emotional impact by creating new associations and perspectives around those events. Memory training can also help combat age-related cognitive decline. While some memory changes are normal with aging, many age-related memory problems result from disuse rather than brain deterioration. People who continue to challenge their memory throughout life often maintain sharp cognitive function well into their later years. Perhaps most importantly, developing memory as a superpower changes your relationship with learning itself. When you can efficiently acquire and retain new information, learning becomes enjoyable rather than overwhelming. You develop confidence in your ability to master new subjects, which opens up possibilities for continued growth throughout your life. Patricia Chen's journey from struggling graduate student to breakthrough researcher illustrates memory's transformative power. Her enhanced memory didn't just help her succeed academically, it became the foundation for contributions that could benefit millions of people. The techniques that once helped ancient orators deliver speeches became tools for modern scientific discovery. This is the ultimate power of memory. It's the superpower that connects past, present, and future into a coherent whole. When you develop this ability, you don't just remember more information, you become someone who can learn faster, think more clearly, and contribute more effectively to whatever field or endeavor you pursue. The power of memory transforms you from someone who struggles to keep up with information to someone who can master knowledge and use it creatively. In an age of information overload, the ability to efficiently encode, organize, and retrieve knowledge becomes a crucial competitive advantage. But more than that, enhanced memory becomes the foundation for wisdom, the ability to draw upon vast experience to make better decisions and see deeper patterns in the complexity of life. In 1995, swimmer Diana Nyad stood on the shores of Cuba, staring across 110 miles of shark-infested waters toward the Florida coast. At 46 years old, she was about to attempt something that had never been done, swimming from Cuba to Florida without a shark cage. The ocean that stretched before her was filled with deadly jellyfish, unpredictable currents, and sharks that could end her life in an instant. This wasn't Diana's first attempt. She had tried and failed at this same swim in 1978. For 17 years, that failure had haunted her, not just the physical failure, but the knowledge that she had given up when the going got tough. Now, approaching 50, she was determined to confront not just the ocean, but her own limitations. That 1995 attempt ended in failure too, and the next one, and the next. For 18 years, Diana Nyad faced defeat after defeat, each failure more public and more devastating than the last. Critics called her delusional. Friends urged her to quit. Her own body betrayed her repeatedly, battered by jellyfish stings, dehydration, and exhaustion. But Diana possessed something that her critics couldn't see, the superpower of resilience. Not the simple ability to endure hardship, but the sophisticated capacity to transform failure into fuel, to extract learning from every setback, and to maintain unwavering commitment to a vision despite overwhelming evidence that it might be impossible. On September 2nd, 2013, at age 64, Diana Nyad emerged from the waters off Key West, Florida, becoming the first person to complete the Cuba to Florida swim without a shark cage. Her first words upon reaching shore captured the essence of resilience: never, ever give up. But those words only scratched the surface of what resilience actually means. True resilience isn't just persistence. It's the ability to adapt, learn, and grow stronger through adversity. It's the mental muscle that allows some people to thrive in circumstances that would crush others. The science of resilience reveals that this isn't a fixed trait you either have or don't have. Like physical strength, resilience can be developed through training and practice. Researchers have identified specific mental patterns, behaviors, and strategies that resilient people use to navigate challenges and emerge stronger. Consider the story of Dr. Marcus Rivera, an emergency medicine physician who seemed to have everything going for him: successful career, loving family, financial security, until a series of cascading failures threatened to destroy everything he had built. It started with a malpractice lawsuit based on a patient death that Marcus knew he had handled correctly. Despite eventually being vindicated, the legal process drained his savings and damaged his reputation. The stress contributed to problems in his marriage, leading to a painful divorce. Depression set in, affecting his performance at work, which led to professional sanctions and further financial problems. Within 2 years, Marcus had lost his job, his marriage, his savings, and his sense of identity. He found himself living in a small apartment, working part-time at an urgent care clinic, wondering how his life had fallen apart so completely. Most people in Marcus's situation might have remained stuck in bitterness, self-pity, or depression, but Marcus began to demonstrate the characteristics that distinguish resilient individuals from those who remain trapped by adversity. First, he practiced what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to reframe situations and find alternative perspectives. Instead of seeing his setbacks as proof that life was unfair or that he was a failure, Marcus began to view them as information about what wasn't working and opportunities to build something better. Second, he focused on what he could control rather than dwelling on what he couldn't. He couldn't change the lawsuit or undo his divorce, but he could control how he responded to these challenges. He could choose to learn from his mistakes, rebuild his skills, and create new relationships. Third, Marcus maintained what researchers call benefit finding, the ability to identify positive outcomes or personal growth that emerge from difficult experiences. The humility forced by his failures made him a more empathetic doctor. The financial constraints taught him to live more simply and appreciate what he had. The isolation motivated him to build deeper, more authentic relationships. Most importantly, Marcus developed what resilience researchers consider the cornerstone of this superpower: the ability to maintain hope and agency even in the face of overwhelming challenges. He never lost his belief that he could influence his circumstances and create a better future, even when he couldn't see exactly how that would happen. 5 years after hitting rock bottom, Marcus had not only rebuilt his career, but had created something better than what he'd lost. He established a nonprofit clinic serving underserved communities, found a life partner who shared his values, and developed a sense of purpose that had been missing from his previous success. The transformation wasn't just personal, it was professional and social. Marcus's experience with adversity made him uniquely qualified to help others facing similar challenges. He became a leader in physician wellness programs, helping other doctors navigate the mental health challenges that plague the medical profession. The power of resilience operates through several key mechanisms. The first is emotional regulation, the ability to manage intense emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Resilient people feel fear, anger, sadness, and frustration just like everyone else, but they don't let these emotions control their decisions or actions. The second mechanism is cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt thinking patterns to new situations. When faced with obstacles, resilient people can shift from one approach to another, generate alternative solutions, and view setbacks as temporary rather than permanent. The third mechanism is social connection, the ability to seek and accept support from others. Contrary to the myth of the rugged individual, resilience is often a social phenomenon. People who maintain strong relationships and can ask for help when needed are more likely to bounce back from adversity. The fourth mechanism is meaning-making, the ability to find purpose and significance in difficult experiences. Resilient people don't just endure suffering, they transform it into something meaningful by connecting their struggles to larger purposes or values. The development of resilience as a superpower begins with understanding that adversity is not the enemy of a good life. It's an inevitable part of life that can become a source of strength when approached skillfully. This doesn't mean seeking out unnecessary hardship, but rather developing the capacity to handle whatever challenges arise. Physical practices support resilience by building the biological foundation for stress management. Regular exercise, adequate sleep, and good nutrition all enhance your body's ability to handle stress and recover from challenges. The discipline required to maintain these practices also builds mental resilience. Mental practices for developing resilience include mindfulness meditation, which helps you observe difficult emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Cognitive behavioral techniques help you identify and change thought patterns that increase suffering. Gratitude practices help maintain perspective during difficult times. Social practices involve building and maintaining relationships that provide support during challenges. This includes learning to ask for help when needed, offering support to others facing difficulties, and creating communities of mutual aid and encouragement. The practice of deliberate challenge, intentionally putting yourself in difficult but manageable situations, can build resilience gradually. This might involve taking on challenging projects at work, learning difficult skills, or engaging in physical activities that push your limits. Failure reframing is a crucial resilience skill. Instead of viewing failures as evidence of inadequacy, resilient people see them as information about what doesn't work and opportunities to develop new strategies. This shift in perspective transforms failure from a source of shame into a tool for growth. The storytelling aspect of resilience involves how you narrate your own experiences. Resilient people tend to tell stories about their lives that emphasize agency, growth, and meaning rather than victimization, stagnation, and meaninglessness. Changing your life story can literally change your life. Post-traumatic growth is perhaps the most remarkable aspect of resilience. Research shows that many people who face significant adversity don't just return to their previous level of functioning. They actually exceed it. They develop greater appreciation for life, stronger relationships, increased personal strength, new possibilities, and deeper spiritual understanding. The business applications of resilience are becoming increasingly recognized as companies face rapid change, economic uncertainty, and global disruption. Resilient employees adapt better to change, perform better under pressure, and recover more quickly from setbacks. Organizations that cultivate resilience in their workforce are more innovative, more adaptable, and more sustainable. Educational applications focus on helping students develop resilience to handle academic challenges, social pressures, and transition periods. Schools that teach resilient skills see improvements in academic performance, mental health, and long-term success outcomes. Healthcare applications involve helping patients develop resilience to cope with illness, chronic conditions, and medical treatments. Patients with higher resilience tend to have better treatment outcomes, faster recovery times, and higher quality of life even in the face of serious health challenges. The digital age creates new challenges for resilience development. Social media can amplify negative comparisons and create unrealistic expectations, while the constant connectivity can prevent the downtime necessary for recovery and reflection. However, digital tools can also support resilience through apps that facilitate meditation, gratitude practice, and social connection. Community resilience extends individual resilience to groups and societies. Communities that develop collective resilience are better able to handle natural disasters, economic disruptions, and social challenges. This involves building social capital, diversifying resources, and creating systems that can adapt to changing circumstances. Perhaps most importantly, resilience as a superpower teaches us that strength isn't the absence of struggle, it's the ability to grow through struggle. When you develop this capacity, you don't just survive difficult times, you use them as raw material for becoming a stronger, wiser, more capable person. Diana Nyad's swim from Cuba to Florida became a metaphor for human resilience. Her 18 years of failure weren't obstacles to her success. They were the training ground that prepared her for ultimate triumph. Each failure taught her something new about ocean conditions, nutrition strategies, mental preparation, or equipment modifications. This is the ultimate power of resilience. It's the superpower that transforms life's inevitable challenges from sources of suffering into opportunities for growth. When you develop this ability, you become someone who can not only handle whatever life throws at you, but can use those experiences to become stronger, wiser, and more capable of helping others navigate their own challenges. The power of resilience doesn't promise that life will be easy or that you'll never face failure or disappointment. Instead, it promises something more valuable, that you have within you the capacity to handle whatever comes and to emerge from every challenge as a more capable, more compassionate, and more purposeful human being. In 1979, Dr. Herbert Benson stood before a room of skeptical medical colleagues at Harvard Medical School, preparing to present research that would challenge everything they thought they knew about healing. For months, he had been studying Tibetan monks who claimed they could control their body temperature through meditation. Using sensitive monitoring equipment, Benson had documented something that seemed impossible. These monks could raise their skin temperature by as much as 17 degrees Fahrenheit using only their minds. But the temperature changes were just the beginning. As Benson continued his research, he discovered that focused mental practices could influence heart rate, blood pressure, immune function, and even gene expression. The mind, it appeared, possessed a superpower that Western medicine had largely ignored, the ability to directly influence physical healing. This wasn't mysticism or wishful thinking. It was measurable, reproducible science. Benson had discovered what he termed the relaxation response, a physiological state opposite to the stress response that could be activated through specific mental practices. In this state, the body's natural healing mechanisms became dramatically more effective. The implications were staggering. If the mind could influence healing to this degree, then patients weren't just passive recipients of medical treatment, they were active participants with the power to enhance their own recovery and health. Consider the story of Sarah Martinez, a 38-year-old architect who received a devastating diagnosis, stage 3 breast cancer. The oncology team laid out a treatment plan involving chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery. The statistics they shared were sobering. Even with aggressive treatment, her 5-year survival rate was only 65%. Sarah underwent the recommended medical treatments, but she also embarked on something her doctors hadn't prescribed, a comprehensive mind-body healing program. She began practicing meditation to activate the relaxation response Dr. Benson had discovered. She used visualization techniques, imagining her immune system as an army destroying cancer cells. She changed her diet, her sleep habits, and her stress management practices. Most importantly, Sarah addressed the emotional and psychological aspects of her illness. She explored the relationships between her high-stress lifestyle and her health. She learned to express emotions she had suppressed for years. She developed a support network and discovered a sense of purpose in helping other cancer patients navigate their journeys. The transformation was remarkable. Not only did Sarah respond better to treatment than her doctors had predicted, but her overall health and vitality improved beyond what she had experienced before her diagnosis. 5 years later, she was not just cancer-free, but healthier and more energetic than she had been in her 20s. Sarah's doctors were amazed by her recovery, but she understood what had happened. She had activated her body's innate healing capacities through the superpower of mind-body integration. Her medical treatments had been crucial, but her mental and emotional work had created optimal conditions for those treatments to be effective. The power of healing through mind-body connection operates through several well-documented mechanisms. The nervous system, immune system, and endocrine system are intimately connected, creating pathways through which mental states can influence physical health. Stress hormones like cortisol suppress immune function, impair tissue repair, and increase inflammation. Chronic stress literally weakens the body's ability to heal itself. Conversely, relaxation states enhance immune function, accelerate healing, and reduce inflammation. The placebo effect demonstrates the healing power of belief and expectation. When patients believe a treatment will help them, their bodies often respond as if they had received an active treatment, even when they've received an inert substance. This isn't just psychological. Placebo responses produce measurable physiological changes, including pain reduction, improved immune function, and faster healing. Visualization and guided imagery can influence healing by activating the same neural pathways involved in actual physical experiences. When you vividly imagine your immune system fighting infection or your tissues repairing themselves, your brain responds as if these events were actually happening, triggering corresponding physiological responses. The development of healing as a superpower begins with understanding that your mind and body are not separate entities, but aspects of an integrated system. Thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and physical health are constantly influencing each other in complex feedback loops. Stress management is foundational to healing because chronic stress is one of the greatest obstacles to natural healing processes. This involves not just managing external stressors, but developing internal resources for maintaining calm and perspective even in challenging circumstances. Meditation and mindfulness practices activate the relaxation response, shifting the body from stress mode to healing mode. Even brief daily practices can produce measurable improvements in immune function, blood pressure, and overall health markers. Breathwork is a particularly accessible healing practice because breath is the bridge between conscious and unconscious body functions. Specific breathing techniques can quickly shift the nervous system from sympathetic stress activation to parasympathetic healing activation. Emotional processing is crucial for healing because suppressed emotions create chronic stress in the body. Learning to feel, express, and release emotions in healthy ways removes a major obstacle to natural healing processes. Sleep optimization is essential because most healing and repair happens during sleep. Quality sleep allows the body to produce growth hormone, consolidate memories, and clear metabolic waste from the brain. Poor sleep dramatically impairs healing capacity. Nutrition plays a vital role in healing by providing the raw materials the body needs for repair and regeneration. Anti-inflammatory foods support healing, while processed foods and sugar can impair immune function and slow recovery. Movement and exercise enhance healing by improving circulation, supporting immune function, and reducing inflammation. Even gentle movement can significantly improve healing outcomes for people with various health conditions. Social connection and support are powerful healing factors. People with strong social networks recover faster from illness, live longer, and have stronger immune systems. Isolation and loneliness create stress that impairs healing. The practice of gratitude and positive emotions enhances healing by reducing stress hormones and increasing beneficial neurotransmitters. Grateful people have stronger immune systems, better sleep, and greater overall health. Environmental factors also influence healing capacity. Exposure to nature, natural light, and clean air all support healing processes. Creating healing environments whether at home or in healthcare settings, can significantly improve outcomes. The integration of conventional medicine with mind-body approaches creates optimal conditions for healing. Rather than replacing medical treatment, mind-body practices enhance the effectiveness of conventional therapies while supporting overall well-being. Cancer treatment centers increasingly incorporate meditation, yoga, art therapy, and other mind-body approaches alongside chemotherapy and radiation. Patients who participate in these integrated programs often have better treatment outcomes and quality of life. Cardiac rehabilitation programs that include stress management and emotional support have better long-term outcomes than those focused solely on exercise and medication. Addressing the psychological and social factors that contribute to heart disease is crucial for preventing future cardiac events. Pain management increasingly recognizes the role of mind-body approaches in breaking the cycle of chronic pain. Meditation, biofeedback, and cognitive behavioral therapy can be as effective as medication for many types of chronic pain without the side effects. Mental health treatment benefits enormously from recognizing the mind-body connection. Depression and anxiety involve physical symptoms that respond to body-based interventions like yoga, breathwork, and exercise. Treating mental health as a whole-person phenomenon is more effective than addressing symptoms in isolation. The field of psychoneuroimmunology studies how psychological factors influence immune function. Research shows that psychological interventions can enhance immune response to vaccines, reduce susceptibility to infections, and improve outcomes for autoimmune conditions. Epigenetics reveals how environmental factors, including stress and lifestyle choices, can influence gene expression. This means that mind-body practices don't just improve symptoms, they can actually change how genes are expressed, potentially affecting health outcomes for generations. The healthcare applications of healing superpowers extend beyond individual treatment to systemic healthcare transformation. Hospitals that create healing environments with natural light, nature views, and quiet spaces see reduced patient length of stay and improved satisfaction scores. Healthcare workers who practice mind-body techniques have lower burnout rates, better job satisfaction, and provide better patient care. Teaching healing skills to healthcare providers improves both provider well-being and patient outcomes. Perhaps most importantly, the power of healing transforms people from passive patients into active participants in their health and recovery. When you understand that you have the ability to influence your own healing, you become empowered to take actions that support your well-being rather than feeling helpless in the face of illness. The digital age offers new tools for developing healing superpowers. Apps for meditation, breathing exercises, and stress management make these practices more accessible. Wearable devices can track physiological markers of stress and recovery, providing feedback on the effectiveness of mind-body practices. However, technology can also create barriers to healing through chronic stimulation, sleep disruption, and social isolation. Learning to use technology in ways that support rather than undermine healing becomes an important modern skill. Community healing extends individual healing practices to groups and societies. Communities that prioritize mental health, social connection, and environmental health create conditions that support healing for all members. The power of healing reminds us that health is not just the absence of disease, but a dynamic state of physical, mental, and social well-being. When you develop this superpower, you become someone who can actively participate in creating and maintaining optimal health throughout your life. Dr. Benson's research with Tibetan monks opened a door to understanding human potential that continues to expand. The monks' ability to control their body temperature was just one example of the remarkable healing capacities that exist within every human being. This is the ultimate power of healing. It's the superpower that recognizes your body's innate wisdom and capacity for self-repair and provides you with tools to support and enhance these natural processes. When you develop this ability, you become not just someone who hopes to avoid illness, but someone who actively creates the conditions for optimal health and vitality throughout your life. The power of healing transforms your relationship with your body from one of fear and helplessness to one of partnership and empowerment. It doesn't promise that you'll never face health challenges, but it ensures that you'll have tools and resources to navigate those challenges with greater resilience, faster recovery, and deeper understanding of your own remarkable capacity for healing and renewal. In 1955, a young physicist named Charles Townes sat on a park bench in Washington, D.C., contemplating what seemed like an impossible problem. He had been working for years on the concept of amplifying light waves to create an incredibly focused beam of energy, but every approach had failed. The scientific community was skeptical, funding was drying up, and colleagues were suggesting he abandon the project entirely. But that morning on the park bench, something shifted in Townes' mind. He later described it as a moment of absolute clarity, when all the scattered pieces of information in his consciousness suddenly aligned into a coherent vision. In that instant of perfect focus, he saw exactly how to create what would become the laser, a device that would revolutionize everything from surgery to communications to space exploration. The breakthrough wasn't just technical, it was a demonstration of one of humanity's most powerful superpowers, the ability to focus consciousness like a laser beam, cutting through distraction and confusion to achieve extraordinary results. This is the power of focus, not just the ability to pay attention, but the capacity to direct mental energy with such precision and intensity that it can transform both inner experience and outer reality. In an age of unprecedented distraction, this superpower becomes both more challenging to develop and more valuable to possess. Consider the story of Patel, a software engineer who discovered the transformative power of focused attention during what seemed like an impossible deadline. Her startup had committed to delivering a complex artificial intelligence system to a major client in just 6 weeks, a project that should have taken 6 months with a full team. Maya was working virtually alone, and the company's survival depended on her success. Traditional approaches to such overwhelming challenges often involve frantic multitasking, long hours, and increasing stress. But Maya chose a different path. She decided to experiment with what she had read about deep work, the ability to focus without distraction on cognitively demanding tasks. Maya began by eliminating all sources of interruption during specific work periods. She turned off notifications, cleared her workspace, and committed to working on single tasks for extended periods without switching attention. But more importantly, she learned to train her attention like an athlete trains their muscles. She started with 25-minute periods of absolute focus, gradually extending these sessions as her concentration stamina improved. During these periods, she didn't just work harder, she worked at a different level entirely. Her mind seemed to access problem-solving capabilities that weren't available during scattered attention states. The transformation was remarkable. Within 2 weeks, Maya was producing work of higher quality and greater complexity than she had ever achieved before. Code that would normally take hours to debug was resolved in minutes. Innovative solutions emerged spontaneously from the state of focused concentration. But perhaps most surprisingly, working in this deeply focused way was less exhausting than her previous scattered approach. Instead of feeling depleted by mental effort, Maya felt energized and satisfied. She had discovered that quality of attention, not just quantity of effort, determined both the effectiveness and enjoyability of work. Maya delivered the project on time, and the quality exceeded expectations. More importantly, she had developed a superpower that would transform her entire career. Her ability to achieve focused states of consciousness became her competitive advantage, allowing her to solve problems that stumped other engineers and to innovate in ways that seemed almost magical to observers. The power of focus operates through several neurological mechanisms. When attention is scattered, the brain's default mode network remains active, creating a constant stream of mental chatter that interferes with deep thinking. But when attention becomes truly focused, this default network quiets, allowing other brain regions to work together with unprecedented efficiency. Focused attention also triggers what psychologists call flow states, periods of effortless concentration where time seems to stop and performance reaches peak levels. In flow, the prefrontal cortex partially shuts down, reducing self-criticism and doubt while enhancing pattern recognition and creative insight. The development of focus as a superpower begins with understanding that attention is not just a mental faculty, but a skill that can be trained like any other ability. Just as physical exercise strengthens muscles, attention training strengthens the neural networks responsible for sustained concentration. Meditation is perhaps the most direct method for developing focused attention. By repeatedly returning attention to a single object, such as the breath, meditation builds what neuroscientists call attention regulation. Even brief daily meditation practice can significantly improve focus capacity. Single tasking is another crucial practice for developing focus. In a culture that glorifies multitasking, the ability to do one thing at a time becomes a revolutionary act. Research consistently shows that multitasking actually reduces productivity and increases errors while creating the illusion of busyness without accomplishment. Environmental design plays a crucial role in supporting focused attention. Creating spaces that minimize distractions through organized layouts, appropriate lighting, and removal of attention-grabbing elements makes sustained focus much easier to achieve. Digital minimalism becomes essential for focus development in the modern world. The constant ping of notifications, the infinite scroll of social media, and the always available entertainment options create what researchers call continuous partial attention, a state where deep focus becomes nearly impossible. Time blocking involves dedicating specific periods to focused work on particular tasks. By creating boundaries around attention and protecting these periods from interruption, you can achieve levels of concentration that scattered scheduling makes impossible. The practice of deliberate difficulty, intentionally engaging with challenging tasks that require sustained attention, builds focus capacity over time. Reading complex books, learning difficult skills, or tackling demanding projects all serve as training for attention muscles. Physical practices support focus development by optimizing the brain's capacity for sustained attention. Regular exercise increases blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, improves mood regulation, and enhances cognitive function. Adequate sleep is crucial because sleep deprivation severely impairs attention and working memory. Nutrition affects focus capacity through its impact on neurotransmitter production and blood sugar stability. Foods that support steady energy levels and brain function enhance attention capacity, while processed foods and sugar can create attention deficits. The applications of focused attention extend far beyond individual productivity to transformation of entire fields and industries. Scientists who can maintain deep focus over extended periods make discoveries that require sustained exploration of complex problems. Artists who develop focused attention create works that emerge from depths of concentration most people never access. In business, leaders who master focus can cut through information overload to identify what really matters. They make better decisions, solve problems more effectively, and inspire others through their clarity of vision and purpose. Educational applications of focus training show dramatic improvements in student learning outcomes. Children who learn attention regulation perform better academically, have better social relationships, and show greater emotional stability. Athletic applications demonstrate how focused attention can enhance physical performance. Athletes who master concentration skills perform better under pressure, learn skills more quickly, and maintain consistency across different competitive environments. Creative applications reveal how focused attention can unlock innovative thinking. Writers, artists, musicians, and designers who develop deep focus abilities access creative insights that remain hidden during scattered attention states. Therapeutic applications use focused attention training to treat conditions ranging from ADHD to anxiety to chronic pain. Teaching people to direct their attention skillfully can dramatically improve quality of life and reduce suffering. The digital age creates unprecedented challenges for focus development. The average knowledge worker checks email every 11 minutes and is interrupted every 3 minutes during focused work. Smartphones deliver an average of 80 notifications per day, creating a constant state of partial attention. However, technology can also support focus development when used skillfully. Apps that block distracting websites, tools that track attention patterns, and platforms that facilitate deep work can help create conditions for sustained concentration. The social dimension of focus reveals how individual attention capacity affects relationships and community. People who can give others their full attention create deeper connections and more meaningful interactions. Communities that value focused engagement over scattered busyness develop stronger social bonds and more effective collaboration. Perhaps most importantly, focus as a superpower transforms your relationship with time itself. Instead of feeling constantly behind and overwhelmed, you develop the capacity to be fully present with whatever you're doing. This presence brings not just effectiveness, but enjoyment to daily activities. The mastery of focus also enhances self-awareness by creating space between stimulus and response. When you can sustain attention, you become aware of your thought patterns, emotional reactions, and behavioral habits in ways that allow for conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. Charles Townsend's moment of clarity on that park bench wasn't just about solving a technical problem. It was about accessing a state of consciousness where solutions become visible. The laser he invented became a metaphor for the focused attention that created it, a coherent beam of energy that can cut through almost anything. This is the ultimate power of focus. It's the superpower that transforms scattered mental energy into a coherent force capable of achieving what seems impossible. When you develop this ability, you don't just become more productive, you become someone who can access deeper levels of creativity, insight, and effectiveness that remain hidden when attention is fragmented. The power of focus doesn't promise that difficult tasks will become easy, but it ensures that you'll have the mental tools to tackle any challenge with clarity, persistence, and skill. In a world full of distractions, the ability to direct your attention with laser-like precision becomes perhaps the most valuable superpower you can develop. In 1827, Ludwig van Beethoven lay dying in his bed in Vienna, racked with illness and deafness, his body failing, but his mind ablaze with musical possibilities he would never have time to fully explore. Despite his physical limitations, or perhaps because of them, Beethoven had spent his final years composing some of the most transcendent music in human history, works that seemed to channel something beyond ordinary human consciousness. His late string quartets, composed when he was completely deaf and could only hear music in his mind, pushed the boundaries of musical expression into realms that wouldn't be fully understood for another century. These works demonstrated something profound about human potential. Creativity isn't just a talent some people possess. It's a superpower that can transcend physical limitations, social conventions, and even the apparent boundaries of what's possible. Beethoven's creativity didn't emerge from comfort or ease, but from the tension between limitation and possibility, between what is and what could be. His deafness forced him to access music from pure imagination, creating compositions that came not from hearing external sounds, but from listening to the infinite symphony playing in the depths of consciousness itself. This is the power of creativity, the ability to bring something new into existence, to see possibilities that don't yet exist, and to transform raw potential into reality. It's the superpower that drives human progress, creates beauty, solves problems, and continuously expands the boundaries of what we thought was possible. Consider the story of Dr. Jennifer Wong, a marine biologist who discovered the creative superpower while facing what seemed like an insurmountable environmental crisis. The coral reefs she had devoted her career to studying were dying at an unprecedented rate due to climate change, pollution, and acidification. Traditional conservation approaches were failing, and the scientific community was largely resigned to documenting the reef's decline rather than preventing it. Instead of accepting this grim reality, Jennifer began to access a different kind of thinking, not just analytical or logical, but genuinely creative. She started asking questions that hadn't been asked before. What if coral reefs could be redesigned to be more resilient? What if technology could enhance rather than destroy marine ecosystems? What if the solution required thinking about coral reefs in completely new ways? These questions led Jennifer into uncharted territory that combined marine biology with materials science, genetics, and even art. She began experimenting with 3D printed reef structures that could provide frameworks for coral growth. She explored the possibility of developing coral varieties that could withstand higher temperatures and acidity levels. Most innovatively, she started creating underwater installations that were simultaneously functional reefs and artistic expressions. Her breakthrough came when she realized that creativity wasn't just about having new ideas, it was about seeing connections between things that seemed unrelated. By combining her deep knowledge of marine ecosystems with insights from architecture, genetics, and aesthetics, Jennifer developed approaches to reef restoration that no one had previously imagined. 5 years later, Jennifer's creative innovations have been implemented in restoration projects worldwide. Her bioengineered reefs are not only surviving in conditions that kill natural coral, but are actually thriving and supporting diverse marine life. More importantly, her work has inspired a new generation of scientists to approach environmental challenges with creative thinking rather than just analytical problem solving. The power of creativity operates through several interconnected mechanisms. At its core, creativity involves what psychologists call divergent thinking, the ability to generate multiple solutions to a problem rather than seeking a single correct answer. This requires temporarily suspending judgment and allowing the mind to explore possibilities without immediately evaluating their feasibility. Creativity also involves the ability to make novel connections between previously unrelated ideas, experiences, or domains of knowledge. The most innovative solutions often emerge when insights from one field are applied to challenges in completely different areas. The creative process typically involves alternating between two different modes of consciousness, focused attention and relaxed awareness. The focused phase involves intensive work on particular problems or projects, while the relaxed phase allows the unconscious mind to process information and generate new insights. Many breakthrough moments in creativity occurred during this relaxed phase, while walking, showering, or engaging in routine activities that don't require intense concentration. This is why many creative people report that their best ideas come not when they're trying hard to be creative, but when they're not thinking about their work at all. The development of creativity as a superpower begins with understanding that everyone possesses creative capacity. Creativity isn't limited to traditional, artistic domains like painting, music, or writing. It can be expressed through problem solving, relationship building, parenting, cooking, gardening, or any activity that involves bringing something new into existence. Curiosity is the foundation of creative development. Creative people tend to be intensely curious about the world around them, constantly asking questions and exploring possibilities. Cultivating curiosity involves approaching familiar situations with fresh eyes and being willing to explore ideas that might seem silly or impractical. Play is another crucial element in creativity development. When we play, we temporarily suspend the usual rules and constraints that govern our thinking, creating space for novel ideas and unexpected connections to emerge. Adult play might involve improvisation, experimentation, or simply approaching serious tasks with a spirit of exploration rather than anxiety. Cross-pollination, exposing yourself to ideas and experiences outside your usual domains, is essential for creative development. Artists who study science, scientists who engage with art, and business people who explore philosophy often generate more innovative ideas than those who remain within narrow specializations. Tolerance for ambiguity and uncertainty is crucial for creativity because the creative process involves venturing into unknown territory where outcomes are uncertain. People who need certainty and clear answers often struggle with creativity because they shut down exploration too quickly in favor of known solutions. The practice of constraints can paradoxically enhance creativity by providing structure within which imagination can operate. Many creative breakthroughs occur when people are forced to work within specific limitations, which focus attention and prevent overwhelming choice paralysis. Collaboration often amplifies individual creativity by bringing together different perspectives, skills, and knowledge bases. The most innovative teams aren't necessarily composed of the most individually creative people, but of people who can build on each other's ideas and create synergies that no individual could achieve alone. Environmental factors significantly influence creative capacity. Spaces that inspire relaxation, provide natural light, and include elements of beauty or nature tend to enhance creative thinking. Conversely, stress, noise, and visual clutter can inhibit creative processes. The digital age has created both opportunities and challenges for creativity development.